Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to a little bit of a late night edition of the show because it's debate night. I don't really want to watch the debate, but I feel like professionally obligated to watch the debate. And because I have to suffer and watch the debate, all of you have to suffer along with me. So, guys, we are doing a very special episode of Nitwits today. I should probably at some point make Nitwits have its own intro because Nitwits of course is a show when I'm basically watching other people's content and knitting, and maybe I want to be a little bit scandalous and naughty on the internet and stuff like that. And tonight we're pre-gaming for a little while, and then we are going to do our duty of watching the third presidential debate. No, sadly, Joshua is not joining us tonight. Mostly, I think, because we both forgot that the debate was happening tonight. And so what I thought we could do is, just for fun, because every once in a while it's kind of fun to peek into the realm of MSNBC, just to see what MSNBC is talking about. Of course, we usually are very used to watching like people that are way more left than anyone on MSNBC is. MSNBC is like your typical progressive. Of course, we watch socialism on this channel. Socialists hate progressives because progressives are too close to capitalism. Of course, the right thinks that MSNBC is like the most left thing that's ever been left in the history of leftists. No, we watch way more lefty people than that. But sometimes it's fun to peek into lefty insanity. And I thought maybe we'd watch a little bit of a Joy Reid tonight. She's already on. I've got the stream pulled up. Joy Reid, her hair has not improved since the last time I watched her. She's talking about the Democrat winning re-election in Kentucky. By the way, Republicans had another impressive losing election night last night. Now, I got to admit, I wasn't paying close attention because I don't really care. I think both parties suck, but I also think that Republicans want to lose. And they did so admirably last night. I actually did write a piece on my Substack that I want to make everyone aware of. My Substack is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. This is where I'm doing journalism on the internet that you will not find anywhere else, bringing you the latest in the leftist cultural revolution takeover of this country and how they're doing it. I break down the woke ideology. I explain the psychology behind it. I give you clips of real life socialists telling you what they're going to do to the world. I tell you what's coming. I explain what's going on in the schools. I explain what's going on in the world. I break it all down in painstaking detail. And one of the reasons I do that is because last night in Ohio, the good people of Ohio voted away parental rights. Now, they didn't think that they voted away parental rights. They thought that they were voting on an abortion bill. Or not even an abortion bill, an amendment to the state constitution. It was a ballot measure that basically enshrined the right of abortion in the state constitution. Because of course, the big thing that's going to drag the Republican Party down, probably for the rest of their lives, is that they took the bait and could not stop effing with abortion. They couldn't let it go. They had to drag it all the way to the Supreme Court because they were like, we're saving babies! And of course, back in 2021, when they dragged it to the Supreme Court, I was like, you morons just took the bait that the left set for you. And they said, no, we're saving babies. And then the Roe v. Wade draft decision was released in May of last year. And I said, you morons just lost every close election for the rest of your life. And I got raked over the coals for that one, man. If I wasn't already excommunicated from the right on that one, I was certainly excommunicated after I told them that they effed themselves probably for the rest of their lives with this. And they said, no, Carlyn, no, you are a leftist and you do not understand that normal Americans don't care about abortion. The only reason that you care about abortion is you are a leftist. Was told this for weeks. Well, the midterm elections roll around in 2022 and oh, wouldn't you know it, I was right. And I took many victory laps after that because I had been raked over the coals. Every conservative influencer. No, Carlyn, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you are just a leftist and you love abortion. And that's why you're saying this is going to be a big issue. Oh, well, it didn't seem so much that way in the midterms in 2022, did it? And now the same thing has happened again. And a ballot measure was put on the ballot in Ohio to enshrine abortion in the state constitution. Now, because Republicans don't effing listen to me ever, because they have convinced themselves that I'm crazy, when in fact I actually almost always turn out to be right. Because Republicans don't listen to me ever, Republicans didn't listen to me when I went undercover at the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference back in April. And it was funny because it was a day-long Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference. And do you know what they spent all their time talking about at the day-long Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference back in April? They spent all their time talking about trans-affirming care for kids. I actually met at the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference back in April. I met a representative from a psychotherapy group in Western Massachusetts who provides psychotherapy to trans 3-year-olds. No joke, wrote about it on my Substack. Fast forward to the socialism conference that I went undercover at in September, and they had all these panels on abortion. We watched one of them on this channel. And in the panels about abortion, what were they talking about? Laws against trans-affirming surgery. I say that to say this. Because Republicans never listen to me, they have absolutely no idea that on the left, the people who are writing the ballot measures that were on the ballot in Ohio last night, The people that are writing the ballot measures see abortion and trans surgery as inextricably linked. They do not talk about abortion without talking about trans surgery, and mostly trans surgery for kids. Every single conference presentation that the far left does about abortion that I have been to in person in the last year and a half, and the ones we've watched online, every single one of those presentations also has trans affirming care for minors in it. They never talk about one issue without talking about the other. Last night, a measure passed in Ohio, and you can read my analysis of it on the Substack right now. When Ohio passed the amendment to the state constitution to enshrine abortion as a right for everyone up until birth, that amendment had an interesting wording. I'll just go in and I'll read it to you. I'll give away the farm on this one. That measure said, provide a state constitutional right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including but not limited to decisions about abortion, contraception, fertility, treatment, miscarriage, continuing pregnancy, and yada, 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 yada. Including but not limited to is basically like saying other duties as assigned on a job description. What they are going to use this for is they are going to use this in the state of Ohio to make sure that trans children have access to gender affirming care, which affects their fertility, whether or not they have parental permission for it. This is going to affect parental permission and parental notification around kids getting trans medical care in Ohio. And this is all because Republicans don't effing listen when people try to tell them what the left is doing. So I hope the Republicans in Ohio that literally just had their parental rights taken away as an amendment to the state constitution because they don't listen, I hope they're happy. And this, by the way, guys, this type of thing, this is how the woke left is going to attack the nuclear family. This is how they're going to abolish the nuclear family. They're going to do it through reproductive justice. They're going to do it by eliminating the gender binary. They're going to do it by transing and queering as many kids as possible. That's how they're going to do it. By getting people to vote away their own rights. And again, because Republicans don't listen to anyone, they have no idea what the left is going to put in these measures that they can't predict because they don't really understand the left. So, that's the type of stuff I cover on my Substack. If you want to support the work I'm doing, you can head over there, read that article, read about what's going on, read in the Life After the Marxist Utopia. I wrote a story last night. Well, not a story. A lot of people have asked me, Carlin, what happens when the left wins? Oh, I'll tell you what happens when the left wins. I wrote it all out, broke it all down for you. That's the type of stuff I do on my Substack. If you want to fund the work I'm doing, please sign up for $8 a month or $80 a year on the Substack. And when you do so, breaking news, before the end of the year, and I am not giving out the dates of when this is going to happen yet, because if I gave out the dates, I might give away what I'm doing. But before the end of the year, I am going to be conducting my biggest woke event training infiltration ever. This is not one presentation. Normally when we spy stream stuff, we do one presentation, like a couple hours. I have spy streamed up to 1 day long of events. But before the end of the year, I'm going to bring you a live, multi-day woke event infiltration that you don't want to miss. I previewed this to some of my supporters earlier today in our supporter Zoom call, and I got to tell you, Don't give it away, guys, but for people who are on the Zoom call, let everyone know how good this event infiltration is going to be. Let everyone just like don't talk about the subject matter at all, but just let people know if you think this event infiltration is going to be juicy. Yep, Kino's helping me out with it. It's going to be huge. We're so excited. It's a really, really, really good one. It's going to be awesome. It is going to be some of the wokest, cringiest teacher training that you have ever seen in your life, and you're going to be able to watch the whole thing live because we're setting it up so that we can bring it to you live. You can sit in and watch what the teachers in your kids' schools are being trained to teach your kids. It's going to be happening before the end of the year, and the only people who will get access to it are people who are supporters of my work, either on my Substack or Locals or Patreon or Twitter subscribers or YouTube channel members. But if you have to choose one, I do ask that you become a subscriber on my Substack. I'm trying to get 200 more subscribers before the end of the year. We're a little over 25% of the way there, so we're like actually right on track, which is great. But guys, this is going to be worth the price of admission. I promise you. I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be amazing. And I want all of you to be in on it as well. You are going to get multiple days worth of supporter only content that takes you live inside a teacher training event to show you exactly and precisely what your kids are going to be learning in the classroom. That's what you get when you sign up for my Substack over at Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. All right, let me see. Is Joy Reid on a commercial? Oh, shoot. Hang on. Are they on a commercial? They're doing something. Okay, you can't see it yet. Okay, hang on. We're pre-gaming a little bit right now, guys. We're pre-gaming a little bit right now, watching some Joy Reid peeking into the progressive rabbit hole. I've got some beer. Actually, before we, she's talking to Claire McCaskill. I just want to say, I've got some beer that I'm going to be drinking tonight, but I want to do a great big shout out to my friend Seth Weathers. Seth just sent me a whole bunch of his conservative dad's ultra right beer. And it's actually like, it's not that it's a good beer. I'm going to say this. I'm not normally a drinker of like the Bud Light, Coors Light type of beers, but I got to tell you, Seth has produced a great light lager. It tastes good. I really enjoy it. My husband loves it. And every once in a while, Seth sends me some. And I'm really excited because we're going to be drinking some of this for debate night. Cheers, everyone. I've also got some other craft beer in the cooler down there. And yeah, that's what we're going to be doing for the night. And thank you, Seth, for sending me this glorious, glorious beer. If you guys haven't tried this yet, I think you can order it on his website. He's getting it distributed into stores. I definitely think if you're in the state of Georgia, you can find it there. But give it a try. Support what he's doing. Seth Weathers is like a great guy. He's like one of the nicest guys in the space, always has been, doing a great job. And I appreciate him. And so I want to encourage everyone, check out his beer, give it a try if you haven't already. And it's got my seal of approval. And you guys know how iffy I am about beer. I wouldn't be giving it my seal of approval if I didn't actually think it was a good beer. So definitely check it out. All right. Now MSNBC has gone on to a commercial break. So we're waiting for that. I have a question for people. While we're waiting for MSNBC to come back, let me put a poll in the chat. And guys, please make sure you mount that like button if you haven't already. And Kino, I'll send you a link in a second. So here's my quandary. I was watching Nick Fuentes stream earlier today just to have something on. It was like, I saw one of his friends tweeted out that he was streaming, and I was like, I need something on in the background. So I turned it on just to see what was going on. And he was like playing some game where he identifies every country in the world, and it was actually really wholesome. But I bring him up for this reason. Yes, I'm going to get the super chat in a second, Naruto. Relax. I bring that up for this reason. I have a choice to make tonight between if we just watch the debate straight up, or apparently Nick Fuentes is thinking about streaming a reaction to the debate himself. And so we can just watch the debate as it normally is, or we can do some meta stream snipe thing where I stream Nick Fuentes' reaction to the debate to kind of get the debate and also like Nick Fuentes reaction to the debate at the same time, which the reason I'm kind of interested in doing this is honestly, like, I'm so bored with most commentators in the space. I'm incredibly bored with them. And I think Nick Fuentes is actually one of the only people that's actually saying things that are interesting. So we can meta stream that. I have no problem with it. But I'm going to let you guys vote in the chat. Should we do a Nick Fuentes meta stream or just do it regular and suffer? We're going to suffer either way. Either way, it's going to be bad. But let me know in the poll what you guys want to do. In the meantime, let me get these couple of super chats. Apparently, the manifesto was leaked by some policemen who were fired, as far as I know. Makes me wonder why they would only leak those 3 pages. Well, I'm betting those policemen only leaked those 3 pages because they wanted you to think that this was all about race. I'm betting that's it. The policeman was probably a conservative who's like, oh, anti-white, 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 anti-white. They wanted you to think the manifesto was all about race. I don't think it was. I think that anyone who knows how to speak socialist knows that it wasn't all about race. But that's what we have to deal with at the moment. So, thank you, Rottweiler, for the update. Naruto says, who's ready for 2 hours of warmongering? Oh, yeah, we're going to see some warmongering tonight. For sure. For sure. All right, let me just get up our MSNBC pregame. And Kino, I'll get you that link in a second if you want to come join. And guys, please do make sure to mount that like button. I will turn the sound up when MSNBC. And the reason we're watching this is sometimes I like to just see what crazy shit Joy Reid is talking about. And so if we're going to pregame, we might as well pregame right with some Joy Reid crazy nonsense. Yeah, I agree with you, Fish Addict. I think that Vivek is going to be the only non-warmonger tonight. I think the rest of them are going to be warmongering. So, Frozen Mints, quick Carlin was right again donation. Oh, thank you, Frozen Mints. I appreciate that. Everyone who was wrong when I was right owes me $2. That's the rule. If you are wrong and I am proven to be right, you owe me a $2 super chat. All right, let's turn up the sound.
Thing that nobody thought was possible. I got rid of Roe v. Wade. The fact that I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade after 50 years of trying, they worked for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. They worked, and I was so honored to have done it. We are in a very good negotiating position right now, only because of what I was able to do.
And there you have it, Donald Trump bragging about getting rid of Roe v. Wade. Tell me, Republicans, how's that been working out for you? Back with me, Claire McCaskill, David.
Exactly.
Clark,
how's that
Sykes,
been working
Jason
out
Johnson.
for you, Republicans?
Charlie,
how's that been working out?
Because for Donald Trump, that line helps him with evangelicals. The problem is he already has white evangelicals. With everyone else, it just reminds them that, you know what, maybe I ought to pay attention to I vote for Senate because they confirm Supreme Court justices. Your thoughts?
No, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this. I mean, after the midterms, Donald Trump actually took a shot at the pro-life movement, said that one of the reasons why Republicans lost was not because of him, it was because they had taken 2 extreme positions. So he's going to try to say, no, I am the more moderate voice here. I am going to, only I will be able to negotiate some sort of a compromise. But it's going to be very, very difficult because, as you mentioned right before the break, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has put his name on, I think, the purest restrictions on abortion rights. There's a long record. There's a constituency that will have bottom lines. You can't walk away from this. Now, he's going to try to distance himself from, say, what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida with a 6-week ban. But
see, I don't know why DeSantis did that whatsoever. Prior to the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the state of Florida, we had a 15-week abortion
government come in and ban abortion rights in every single state.
Because he's pandering.
Whether it is 6 weeks or 15 weeks, where there's exemptions for rape.
He's doing it because he's pandering.
The huge issue. And I don't see how
that's the only reason.
I was like, can I do a quick shout out?
Because,
yeah.
Well, you
go ahead.
Yeah, I was on the Twitter space.
Taking credit
cheers.
For this particular moment.
What do you got? Yingling?
Yingling Oktoberfest, actually.
I mean, it
oh, right on. I've never had that.
You know,
oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I was on a Twitter or X, whatever you wish to call it, space with John Burke. It's kind of like what we're doing right now, like the pre-show debate show, if you will. I brought up the abortion issue, and he's like, no, like, let the states decide, let the states decide. I'm like, bro, normally I agree with you, but this was a piss poor tactic. Especially on the eve of midterm election season, it could have waited. But no.
They can't help themselves. Okay, let's listen and see what they have to say.
And it's his signature accomplishment. He was just bragging in that clip you showed about he terminated Roe v. Wade. Hard to run away from that. And obviously in today's world, you can feed that to whichever voter you want, whichever battleground state as many times as you want to. So I agree with Charlie that he'll try and somehow moderate. But again, there is one person above all responsible for where we are in this country as it relates to women's reproductive rights, and it's Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
So the other thing about Trump and abortion is, we don't know where the economy is going to be, and that is a huge question. And again, I would just remind everybody, sometimes, Democrats, we can focus on statistics, and voters can't be told how they view the economy. They tell us how they view the economy. Okay, so if in their view it is getting better, right? Joe Biden's got a lot of accomplishments. He should talk about those. I think he should do it in a contrast frame with Trump, because ultimately it's really hard for incumbents in today's politics to win a referendum. He has to turn this into a searing, simple choice. So he's got to do what he can to make sure Trump doesn't have any advantage on the economy. But you've got abortion. You've got the Trump circus. You've got these other big things that drive vote. And this is the important thing in politics when you're managing campaigns. What is driving vote? And this drives vote. And I think it drives both swing voters' behavior. It also can drive turnout for younger voters. So yeah, this is going to be front and center. And I think that it's going to be impossible for Trump to run away from this, because again, he is the author in many ways of where we are today.
And on the economy piece, Jason, I was saying to Claire in the break that my working theory is that the only people who actually really do vote based on the economy, no matter what people tell pollsters, are younger people who have less money.
That's
and who
bullshit,
really
Joy.
Come
live
on. The economy in a different way. Older voters generally either have more money in the bank or they're more secure. They'll say they're voting on the economy, but it's younger people who do. And let's talk specifically about younger African Americans. This is a big question people are having, is whether Black voters are going to come out for Biden. There's a lot of issues that they're not happy with him about right now. And the stimmy that Donald Trump as president put his big magic marker on for a lot of lower income voters who got the physical check with the signature on it, and for a lot of Black voters that represented the government actually doing something directly for them. You cannot talk people down from that, and they think the economy is bad. So how much do you think something like abortion motivates against something like the economy, wherein younger voters actually do not think the economy is good, no matter what the stats say?
Abortion is about fundraising.
Here's
That's
the thing,
what
Joy.
it's about.
All young Black voters aren't created equal, right? Like, I'm a college professor at Morgan State. I tell my students all the time, you're not representative of most people. You're in college, right? Like, there's a difference between being 20 years old and working at Chick-fil-A and 20 years old and working on your master's degree, right?
Yeah.
So that's really going to be the issue. I say this all the time. This has always been my theory about the economy, Joy. Wait until the first polls after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the greatest polling time forever. It's when everybody gets together and you find out, hey, does Dre feel like he's going to get a new job when he graduates? Which family members can show up? Is Thanksgiving smaller this year because we can't afford turkey because of inflation? How people feel about the economy is based on how it's affecting those in their family. And everyone will make an assessment of that in about 2 weeks. If people are feeling slightly better about the economy after Thanksgiving, that is a good sign for Joe Biden next year. If people leave Thanksgiving and say, hey, I only have one slice of cranberry because it costs too much at Kroger, Democrats are in trouble, and they're going to have to come up with something else other than abortion.
Amen to that. Claire, let me get the final one to you here, because there are other people running. It's kind of hard to remember that because they don't seem really relevant or important. But there are a bunch of people who say they're running for president.
They don't feel
think
relevant.
they're running for podcasts. They want to compete with Ben Shapiro, not with Donald Trump. But they're running Ron DeSantis,
they're
Nikki
running
Haley,
for
Chris
cabinet.
Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott. What is the purpose of them at this point?
I don't know. I don't
Fucking
think they
Nikki
know.
Haley.
I
Fuck
mean,
conservatives.
You cannot
Fuck
beat
conservatives
somebody
right
by
in the ass.
ignoring
For
them.
real.
Right.
Fuck
And they have,
conservatives.
all of them have ignored Trump this entire time.
I'll tell you what, Vivek
That's
is
not
not
true.
swinging. This is
Chris
like,
Christie
this
is
is
the
it.
only one that calls him out. They are so far behind him. And if they all would have in the beginning said, we're going to reject This guy who's been indicted 91 times in 4 jurisdictions and who is trying to undermine the very basic tenet of our country in terms of our democracy,
And that's a
then we'd
bad
be in a
thing.
different place.
You're convincing me to vote
You
for
don't
him.
beat somebody
She is
by
so
ignoring them.
salty.
And my prediction is they're going to have a smaller audience tonight, and none of them are going to move significantly after the debate, and none of them will say the word Trump, with maybe the exception of Chris Christie.
Maybe Nikki Haley.
Vivek
Well, no, she won't say
Ramaswamy
it.
loves
I
Trump.
don't think so.
No, she won't. They should just do a show of hands. Who here likes Trump?
Vivek-
All of you? Okay. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next debate. Claire McCaskill, David Fluff. Y'all like him? You sure? Chris Christie, you like him a little bit too? Okay. Amen. It's over. David Fluff, Charlie Sykes, Jason Johnson, Claire McCaskill. Thank you all very much. Up
All
next,
right.
Ivanka Trump
They
takes a
got such a
stand.
strong rather than beard.
All right.
Jesus.
We'll turn that down. And look at the Ivanka's like crying in that artist rendition of the Jesus Christ.
Oh my! Did you see the artist renders of the crypto guy?
Oh God, that was like so. I was like, how much did he bribe that guy?
Like, I don't know. Like, I never seen anyone draw a touch of downs before until I saw those drawings. Man, those were brutal.
Oh man, let me get this super chat from Milo. Milo says Candace Owens did an analysis of the Nashville leak last night. You should do a reaction to her analysis. You know, even though Candace Owens blocked me on Twitter because she was pissed off that I interviewed Nicole Arbor about Candace Owens trying to secretly record Nicole Arbor to throw her under the bus on her very first show, even though Candace Owens blocked me on Twitter, I am softening just a smidgen, as my grandmother would say, to Candace Owens because she is like the only goddamn conservative commentator who's calling it correctly on Israel. Besides Nick Fuentes, and Lauren Chen is as well. But Lauren Chen obviously got a stern talking to from the Blaze over that. But like Candace Owens working for the Daily Wire, calling it correctly on Israel, that takes balls so far as I'm concerned. She got a point back. What do you think, Kino?
You know, I think the whole banning you on Twitter thing, I'm just going to blame that on pregnancy hormones.
I mean, I felt rather liberated, but I never even interacted with her. I didn't. If I need to look at her Twitter account, I'll just do it for my sock account. So it's not even like that big of a deal.
Like, I don't know. She's with the Daily Wire. How come she got a stern talk? How come she didn't get the stern talking to? The other person did.
Well, that's a really the Blaze is a different organization than the Daily Wire.
I thought she was with the Daily Wire.
No. Candace Owens is with the Daily Wire, but Lauren Chen is with the Blaze, and I promise you, Lauren Chen got a stern goddamn talking to about some of the things that she was saying on Twitter. I bet you she did. I don't know that for sure. I haven't talked to her or anything, but I bet you she got a stern talking to. I don't know. I bet you that I wouldn't be surprised if the Daily Wire did not renew Candace Owens' contract, if I'm honest about it.
Like, she's still, she's still considered YouTube friendly. She's still bringing in the revenue. So I'm sure they'll just tighten up the leash on her, forgive the expression though, but they're just going to keep it close. But we'll see.
I guess we will see. So what I got from what MSNBC did just then is they're going to be hitting Trump hard on the "you overturned Roe v. Wade" thing. And again, what abortion is about for the Democrats, it's about raising money. They raised a metric ton of money on abortion after Roe was repealed. They're still raising money on it today. They're using it to turn out the youth vote on college campuses in a way that, I'm sorry, Turning Point USA isn't doing shit. The only reason that Turning Point USA even exists is to turn out the youth vote on college campuses, to activate conservative youth on college campuses. And they can't do it. They were ineffective at doing it anyway, but like Democrats are so much more effective at that. So we have someone in here who is not a Vivek fan. Vivek can't be trusted. He has drastic political ideology shift in a short period of time. That's just not true, bro. You fell for a smear campaign. I am sorry that you fell for a smear campaign. I really, really am. But this is just not true. Vivek Ramaswamy on his own is worth nearly $1 billion. Like, to say he had several failed businesses, if having a failed business nets you a net worth of $1 billion, bro, I think that's a pretty good way to fail. So that's just not true. Like, we hinge into reality on this channel.
And on top of that, too, out of all the candidates on stage, Vivek has done more to help fight back what's happening in schools than any other candidate has.
Yes,
period.
he has. Yes, he has. Vivek Ramaswamy is the real deal. And the other thing, too, is Vivek Ramaswamy does things behind the scenes that he doesn't brag about, that people don't know about. And I know that because we know people that Vivek Ramaswamy has done really good things for, to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars, just to help people out, that he never bragged about, he never took credit about. He just did it because it was the right thing to do. And so, like, he is the real deal. I'm sorry. There is no way. No, it's not true, bro. Stop making shit up in my chat right now. Vivek Ramaswamy is the real deal. He might not be perfect, but he is far and away the best Republican prospect for president. Now, will he get the nomination? No, of course not. But anyway, we're coming back to MSNBC. Let me turn this
I
up.
do not recall. Sorry. That was the most repeated response from Ivanka Trump today during her testimony in the $250 million civil fraud trial against her father and the family business.
You know, I got to go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, hold down the fort for me. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just sit here and look pretty for you.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Jr. and Eric last week. But unlike all of them, she was the first Trump to not
I don't have control of all the buttons, so
table before taking the stand.
This might not end well.
In the case, she was an executive vice president in the Trump organization before she left the company in 2017 to serve as a senior White House aide. Prosecutors say it was in her role as company VP that Ivanka was involved in securing and negotiating loans to obtain favorable terms based on the fraudulent financial statements for both the Doral Golf Club in Florida and the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. Joining me now is NBC's Adam Reese, who was in court today and has been in court every day enjoying this trial.
Milo, I don't have control of all the studio functions, though. I got a job, bro.
The interactions have sort of been one of the fascinating things. You were there for the yelling, Donald Trump yelling at the judge. Give us a little bit of a.
I wish I could do a poll. Here's the poll I want to do regarding Joy Reid here.
You say that because
does the carpet match the drapes? Yes or no in the chat?
Family playbook. Just like Donald Trump, the brothers. She denied.
I'm back.
She was very comfortable.
I'm back.
She
Quick
was composed,
at the bathroom.
Calm, cool, collected.
She didn't yell at the judge.
She didn't yell. She was very cool, but she didn't remember anything. She must have said, I don't recall, some 24 times, maybe even 30 times. And prosecutors said she knew this business. She knew the valuations top to bottom, the most important things, but she didn't remember any of it. You know, she said, there are plenty of valuations that I deal with. It's a big company, but the most important, the critical element to this case is the statements of financial condition, which she was very involved in. She didn't recall emails that she had sent, documents that she had signed.
Yo, I don't recall emails that I sent last week.
It was a whole different story. She suddenly found her voice. She was able to expound on the old post office. It was decrepit. There was a food court in the basement. We turned it around into a world-class hotel. The Doral Golf Course, she talked about how her and her father would reminisce. It was the first spa in the world. So she found her voice, but I must say, Joy, for the most part, she really developed a case of amnesia.
Is it surprising to you, based on the way that the prosecution is presenting her knowledge of the business, that she's not a part of the case?
She is a part of the case.
Or that she's not on trial.
Yeah, she's not a defendant. She's just a witness, and she had to be dragged here.
Yeah.
She fought tooth and nail. She said, I take my kids to school in Miami, but she didn't win. She was back. We thought she might even continue into tomorrow. Prosecution ended. There was a short cross, and she's gone.
And she didn't sit at the defense table. That's odd.
She didn't. Because she's not a defendant. So she was able to avoid that camera spray where they have to smile and mug for the cameras before they take the stand.
Was there any sort of interaction between the sort of looking, any eye contact? Like what was the interaction between her and the defense table?
She actually, as I saw, Eric did this a lot. She glanced over. She wanted to get support, maybe a little bit of recognition, even though those aren't her attorneys.
Yeah.
She had her own attorney sitting in the back of the gallery. But she was still looking over. And when she left during the lunch break, she sort of slowed down and had a little chat with Chris Keyes, the defense attorney.
Yeah.
I think she was coordinating with them as well, for sure.
Now, initially, she did have the same attorneys, but then once she was taken
off, do you think that they ever sell those courtroom illustrations?
She clearly wants to separate herself from this case.
Put it on a T-shirt.
You know, there is some talk she's separated herself from parts of the family. She has had some reconciliation with her father. They talk, but she's in Miami and she wants to get as far away from this as possible.
She wants to be with the Kardashians. She wants back her social credibility, which I don't think that is going to float, but that's what she wants to do. Are any of these folks expected to come back? Is she expected to come back? Are the sons expected to come back on stand?
She won't come back, and that's why they wanted to make sure they finished with her. There's a good chance both of the boys will come back, Eric and Don Jr.
Yeah.
There's a possibility Donald Trump himself could come back. There's some suggestion he felt he did a good job on Monday.
Yelling at the judge?
And he may want to, have another shot at it. They
That
have
judge is
127
compromised,
witnesses.
is
They're
corrupt.
going to go
I'm
until
surprised that
December
something hasn't gotten
15th.
thrown out of
Tomorrow,
court yet.
they're going to argue for a mistrial. So this case is not over.
Adam Reese, and he's in there so that we don't have to be. So thank you very much for what you are doing and for the great reporting. Thank you, Adam. Up next, breaking news from the Pentagon tonight.
Breaking
as the
news.
US launches,
Breaking
as the
news.
U.S. launches an airstrike in response to recent attacks by Iran-linked groups. More next.
Oh, great. We're going to war with
We're
Iran.
going to war.
Another
to war.
fresh fucking hell.
All right.
God. Nuritu says conservatives hate Vivek because he dared to take a business grant, well, a scholarship, not even a bit, from George Soros's brother as a young 20-something. Yeah, I mean, this is so stupid. This is a classic case of conservatives shooting themselves in the foot yet again for no good reason. The best political goddamn candidate of his goddamn generation, a gift to the Republican establishment, and they're like, you took a scholarship when you were 20. Ew. What do you think,
I'm like, we're talking about a fucking genius here. He graduated from high
Genius.
school early, valedictorian. All right. If someone offered me a scholarship for, from graduating high school, I'm going to take the motherfucker, no questions asked. That's free money. That's free money for a reason,
Yep.
And he's a self-made with a B billionaire. On top of that, everyone has a past, though. Does that mean that he falls in line with Soros's politics? Hell to no. He was a libertarian all through high school and all through college. Honestly, he's the most libertarian candidate on the debate stage.
He's too good for them. I'm sorry. The Republicans do not deserve Vivek Ramaswamy. And obviously he's not going to win. And I know that. But he is by far and away the best goddamn candidate in the entire race. And it's so stupid. If Republicans nominated Vivek, he would win. Hands down. He would win. He would beat Joe Biden so easily. It's not even funny. It wouldn't even be close. He would win. And it's just like, they don't want to win. What they want are their toys. They want their Trump. They want their Trump, and they're going to kick and cry and scream until they get their Trump, and then they're going to lose in 2024 because there is no way Trump is winning in 2024. They are going to keep, the establishment is going to keep going after him and going after him and going after him. 19 ways from Sunday. They're going to cheat. The Republicans had 3 years to figure out how to cheat better than the Democrats up until last night. They haven't done anything. Literally nothing. Again, Scott Presler is the only person in the entire Republican Party who's actually done something, like one person. It's so stupid. Hang on, I want to take the super chat from Rottweiler real quick. Sorry. Rottweiler says, not only that, Vivek's positions have remained consistent for the most part since his college days. There are speeches from him online back then. Yes. What do you think, Kino?
I was reading the rest of the chat. I am so sorry on that one. Oh my God. I got no comment on that question. I'm sorry. I was reading the other hand.
That's all right. Just saying Vivek has been consistent since college.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that was brought up in the Twitter space with the candidates on stage, they kept on bringing up the fact that I'm like, oh, he flip-flops a lot. I'm like, yeah, can the motherfucker not change a mind?
People are supposed to change their minds.
Yeah.
It's like, if you expect people to believe the same thing their entire life, then what are we even doing here? I mean, to be honest, like getting someone to vote for your party when they've never voted for your party before is about getting them to change their mind. And so if you don't want people changing their mind, can we just all pack it up and go home?
Like, seriously,
can we just hand the country over to the Democrats? Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. And then you're going to shit on someone for change. Like to this day, I'm called a leftist by Republicans because I left the Democratic Party, didn't become a full conservative, and they got pissed off when I became a libertarian. And it's like, you're just a leftist, you're just like, I changed my mind and I evolved my position. I'm actually more right-leaning than most Republicans are. And it's like, you don't want people to vote for you. You don't want people to win.
Like, isn't learning part of growth?
Yeah.
Like,
indeed.
I know that sounds cliche as all hell, though, but I'm like, let's be real. If you're wrong on something, like let's say you and I have an opposing viewpoint, all right, and let's say that I am rock hard, I'm solid on this particular viewpoint. Let's fast forward a couple of years down the line after being presented with other information. Am I not allowed to have a change of heart on a particular topic?
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. It's like people are going to change their minds. That's the way it goes. And if you don't want people to, have the ability to change their minds, then what are we doing? All right, let's get this breaking news about us going to war.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement that the strike was carried out at President Biden's direction. It is the second time in recent weeks that the U.S. has attacked.
This is just blatantly false, bro.
Joining me now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent
Wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
This is a burning question for lots of people, even though this was not near the Israel-Palestine, right near there. It was north, far north of there, is whether this is related in any way. I think that's what a lot of people are wondering.
And Joy, that is the perfect question. And defense officials want to say that this is completely separate and apart from the war that's raging in Israel and in Gaza right now. But the reality is none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So there have not been strikes and attacks on bases housing Americans in Iraq and Syria for months. They restarted on October 17th, and we've seen a pretty strong uptick in attacks since then, as many as 5 on Sunday, in fact, across bases in Iraq and Syria. That's why the U.S. took this strike tonight in northeastern Syria. The U.S. saying that it was a retaliation for those attacks on bases, at least 41 of them since October 17th. Now, the majority of those strikes or those attacks on these bases have not been effective, but there have been at least 46 U.S. personnel who have received minor injuries. Many of them include traumatic brain injuries from these attacks on these bases. At least 4 of them have seen some damage to infrastructure or injuries. Now, the strikes tonight in northeastern Syria, we're looking at the map right now, they were against a facility that housed ammunition and weapons for these Iranian-backed militias. But they come about 2 weeks after another set of strikes, also in northeastern Syria, targeting facilities with weapons and ammunition. But officials, after those strikes, there have still been more attacks against these bases, and that's why they carried out the second set tonight. The big question is, will what the U.S., these strikes by these F-15s tonight, will they have the deterrent effect that these attacks on bases will stop now? And we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, Joy.
Quick follow-up. We can put the map back up, because as we can see by the map, this is relatively close to Iran. We know that there are carriers that were moved to the region at the start of.
They don't understand because their influencers lie to them. They don't understand why they lost because their influencers lie to them.
Pulling us into
That's
some
why
sort
they're
of conflict with
confused.
Iran. We know these are Iran-backed groups.
Well, that's the actual
Allegedly,
big
we're
concern
winning.
here. So the concern is that
exactly.
one of these attacks
Tim Pool says
is
they're winning.
successful, and that a U.S. service member or members are killed, and that would potentially draw the U.S. into a wider conflict here. So what's interesting is, despite the fact that these attacks by these drones, mortars, indirect fire, despite the fact that they've been carried out by these Iranian-backed groups, primarily Kataib Hezbollah, who operates in Iraq and Syria, but the U.S. is calling on Iran to tell these groups to stop, to direct them to stop these attacks, to stop training and equipping and funding the groups so that they can't carry out these attacks. And, you mentioned that there's the carrier. If you look at that map right there, there's a carrier strike group in the Eastern Mediterranean. That's really more directed at Israel. But there's also a number of U.S. ships in the Persian Gulf, in the Northern Red Sea. So there's certainly a large military presence throughout the region, and it's only grown since October 7th, Joy.
Courtney Kuby, thank you very much. Thank you. Great reporting. Coming up, 22 House Democrats join most Republicans in voting to censure Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
Oh, that's going to be our
controversial
last story
comments about Israel and Gaza. We'll be right back.
Kind of torn on that one.
It doesn't mean anything. Like, who cares? I don't think they should have censored her. It's free speech.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how many conservatives or Republicans, whatever label you wish to give these people, online on Twitter, saying, "Oh, we should deport them. Oh, yeah, they should be, we should remove them out of office. Yeah, I agree, but they have freedom of speech, and to follow these, these referendums against them, that's a violation of free speech. If you want these people out of office, run for office, vote against them, vote them out of office, or impeach them. Like, they're not going anywhere. It's just smoke up the ass.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like, can we stop dicking around, please, for the love of God? All right. Guys, we have a poll in the chat right now. Now, allegedly, Nick Fuentes is going to be doing a debate reaction stream. And so I asked people earlier, should we meta stream Nick Fuentes' debate reaction stream to get Nick's instant take on the debate, or should we just watch the debate straight? We have a poll in the chat right now. Currently, 61% of you think that we should. Now, here's the thing. Nick Fuentes is not always the most reliable streamer. He mentioned on his stream earlier today that he was thinking about doing this, but that doesn't really mean anything because frequently Nick Fuentes falls asleep and then doesn't do a show when he means to do a show. Okay. And so maybe there'll be a stream and maybe there won't, but if you have an opinion on this, make sure you're voting in the poll. It looks like most of you.
We are only with cigars and
yeah.
liquor.
I have no interest. Steven Crowder talks over the debate. And so I actually do want to hear the debate. If Nick Fuentes is just talking and dicking around the entire time, I'm going to turn it off and just watch the debate. But I am actually interested in hearing his reaction just because he's like one of the only people with interesting takes on the internet, especially about the Israel stuff, because he knows that way better than I do. And I think you do too. So we'll see if he does it. We'll cross our fingers that he didn't fall asleep or something. But we do have the debate queued up. Just by itself as well. Please make sure you mount that like button for me, guys. Mounting the like button lets YouTube know to recommend the stream so that more people can come and join us. Please do make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you're watching on. Hello to everyone over on Rumble. I have the Rumble chat up as well, so I can see what's going on there.
Like, what do you mean by Nick falling asleep? What is he, like, pulling a Joe Biden? I know he's a young guy and everything. It was past his bedtime.
I don't know. It's like so I don't really watch his show anymore. I was like watching it pretty religiously for a while, but like what happens is he starts his live stream and then he like, and it's basically like a bunch of like promos and stuff like that. And he lets that run for a long ass time. But lately there have been a couple times where he legitimately just fell asleep or something and the promos played all night. And like he might get up in the morning and do a show, or he might just not do anything. It's like there's no consistent timing of his streams. It's crazy, but he's young, I suppose. He doesn't know how clocks work. It's just the way it goes sometimes. So hopefully he gets it together. But if he doesn't, we'll just watch the debate.
Yeah,
we'll just watch the debate. We will suffer. No, I don't see him streaming on Cozy either. I think he's planning on doing this on Rumble. So I have his Rumble channel up. Anyway, let me get my NBC up on my other browser.
So, like, allegedly, like I've been reading the chat here, Carlin, while you're doing that.
Yep.
So, allegedly, Nate could be Autumn.
I don't think so. I don't think that Nate is Autumn. I think that is speculation at best. All right, I've got NBC pulled up. Let's turn up Joy again.
Northern Gaza as Israeli troops push into the heart of Gaza City. And the UN and Red Cross continue warning of a humanitarian catastrophe. While here in the U.S., the House of Representatives, which I should note has still not passed a budget to avoid a government shutdown, took time out of its schedule yesterday to censure Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib, the sole Palestinian American in Congress, over her rhetoric about the war between Israel and Hamas. 22 Democrats joined most Republicans in the rebuke, accusing her of calling for the destruction of Israel for her use of the slogan, "From the river to the sea." The censure, however, did not come before heated debate on the House floor.
Rashida Tlaib has the right to spew anti-Semitic vitriol and even call for the destruction of the Jewish state.
Yes, she does.
But the House of Representatives also has the right to make it clear that her hate speech does not reflect the opinion of the chamber.
What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity.
had a member of your party call my colleague a terrorist, and you didn't censor her.
Palestinian people are not disposable.
Michigan has a large Arab population. I get why she's doing this.
Oh yeah, Dearborn
this is smart.
We are human beings.
Crocodile tears.
Just like anyone else. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all.
I agree.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Brad Schneider of Illinois, who voted in favor of censuring Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. And I'm sure you were able to hear, I know that you probably can't see it, but you could hear, and I'm sure you were hearing what Congresswoman Tlaib had to say yesterday. Tell me why you voted to censure her.
Because you get a lot of money from Israel.
Sure.
That's why.
The issue is that the phrase "from the river to the sea" has a long history. It was initially the cry of the PLO in 1964. Mind you, the PLO in 1964, before Israel took control of Gaza or the West Bank. It is the rallying cry of Hamas, and it has a very distinct meaning. It is the meaning of the destruction of Israel and the murder of the Jews living in Israel. And so that's why it is a fraught phrase which carries heavy weight. I think the important thing to recognize is that as elected officials, we all have a responsibility to express our feelings, express our views, and have the right to do so.
I love how conservatives won't admit there's a genocide in Palestine, but saying words that you don't like is calling for a genocide.
Or say things. Representative Tlaib has put up on her social media the lie about an attack on the hospital in Gaza that was not an attack by Israel, but was an errant rocket from Palestinian Islamic
I
Jihad.
don't give a flying fuck, Richard.
I asked her to take it on.
Try very hard not to say anything overtly racist in my chat, Richard. You won't be here for very long.
People know what that means. They know that Hamas, when they crossed the border on October 7th, just brutally murdered 1,400 people, took 240 civilians hostage back to Gaza, continues to hold those hostages today and continues to fire rockets at Israeli cities from Palestinian neighborhoods in Gaza. When they say "from the river to the sea," it has a very specific meaning, and that meaning needed to be called out.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this phrase has had many meanings over the many years, and it has been used in ways that I think could be arguably negative toward Israel or wanting Israel not to exist anymore. But not everyone agrees that that's what it is. Are you aware that the Likud party, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party, used in its original party platform, between the sea and the Jordan, there will be only Israeli sovereignty? So others have used the phrase as well.
Joy Reid for the win.
And it just is wrong. And it's I'm one of the founders and co-chairs of the Abraham Accords caucus in Congress, bipartisan, bicameral. And the idea of the Abraham Accords, the normalization of relations between Israel and Arab states, is that Jews and Arabs belong to the same land. Both have legitimate claims to that land, and both need to learn how to live on that land. And the Abraham Accords recognizes Israel, but also recognizes that by embracing each other, Arabs and Jews together can not only lift up the land, but can lift up each other, the people of the region, and give all their kids the future and prosperity that they deserve.
Let me read to you what Rashida Tlaib, her explanation of her use of the slogan. This is what she said: "From the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. My work and advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity." Did you have a conversation with your Democratic colleague before making the decision on how to vote on this?
I'm not questioning her intentions, her good intentions. I believe that she wants for the Palestinians the peace that she talks about and promotes. But the fact of the matter is that Hamas uses "from the river to sea" as their rallying cry. People around the world have heard that, have joined that, and have called for the destruction of the state of Israel.
My question to you, though, is did you talk to her? Did you have a personal one-on-one conversation with her?
She hasn't talked to me in over a year.
Let me ask you this question. Are you concerned about the
I can't imagine why.
While 10,000 people have reportedly been killed in Gaza, and 4,000 of them children, and while people are still dying, and the fact that she has family in the West Bank where settler violence is continuing, that she's been censured when I'm going to just put up a tweet by my colleague Mehdi Hassan, about some of the things that others have said in the House. Republican Congressman Max Miller said Gaza should be turned into a parking lot. Republican Congressman Brian Mast said Palestinian civilians are like Nazis. Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton said Gaza should be leveled and to bounce the rubble. None of those people have been censured. Would you call upon those people to be censured? And are you concerned about the optics of just censuring the one Palestinian American member?
Look, I have a long record. I called out Paul Gosar when he threatened Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I called out Marjorie Taylor Greene when she made inappropriate analogies to the Holocaust. When Brian Mast on the floor last week, when we were debating various bills, made the statements or similar statements to what you just described about the Palestinians, I called him out on it. We have to see the humanity on all sides. And it's not just the optics of 10,000 people dying in Gaza. In war, the civilians are always the victims. They're caught in the middle. Hamas started this war on October 7th with a horrific, heinous attack, killing 1,400 Israelis, murdering and raping those Israelis. They took 240 prisoners hostage that they will not allow the International Red Cross to visit or provide them the medical care that they need. We need to come together and talk to each other and find a way to promote peace. But as long as Hamas controls Gaza, as long as Hamas is...
Sorry, we gotta go because it's
no,
debate
I'm relieved.
time.
Thank God. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Okay, I don't see a stream on Nick Fuentes' channel, so I'm getting NBC up, guys. This is Debate Night live stream. If you're drinking something fun, please put it in the chat. Let us know. And I'm checking Nick's channel.
Mental health. Tap into your benefits with our 5-step checklist at Blue Cross.
That was a nice little jaunt into MSNBC insanity.
Tonight, a critical test in the race for the White House. 5 Republicans
Is that Lester?
on their party's 2024 presidential nominee. The candidates ready to make their case on why they're prepared to be commander-in-chief amid 2 wars on the world stage, how they plan to tackle stubborn inflation, how they can unite a deeply divided electorate. Who is best to take on President Biden? And can any of them first beat former President Trump, who's far ahead in the polls? The candidates are here. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
From NBC News, the Republican presidential debate. Live from the Adrian Arst Center in Miami, Florida.
Sorry, I couldn't be there.
Is that outside? Oh, no, that's not. Okay, I see.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Republican presidential debate. I'm Lester Holt, anchor of NBC Nightly News.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Welker, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press.
Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt, host of Salem Radio's The Hugh Hewitt Show.
We are now just 68 days from the Iowa caucuses when Republican primary voters will begin to determine their party's nominee for president. Tonight, we'll question 5 candidates seeking that nomination on how they're best prepared to be commander-in-chief. And of course, how best to bring down prices impacting Americans across the country. We have 2 hours for a serious debate on the issues that matter most to Republican voters. Candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds for answers and the opportunity for a closing statement.
I'm having a candy bar, Gunner's daughter, for my next beer.
Invoking
I got mine right here on deck as well.
Milk stout with vanilla beans, cacao, caramel, and salt.
We want to caution all candidates not to interrupt.
I got something that you'll hate.
Debaters, if you talk over each
no
other,
interrupting, not like last time, assholes.
Critical issues we're facing specifically
Why is
on the
Nikki
world
Haley
stage,
wrinkled?
we want
Nikki
everyone to
Haley's
hear
whole
every
top
word
is
you have
wrinkled.
to say. Continued interruptions.
Oh, I
may
thought you were
result in
talking about
loss
her
of
lack of
additional
Botox.
questions.
Well, no,
And to
her
our
top
audience,
is like all
please,
wrinkly.
Please hold your applause so that the candidates can be heard.
Yeah, I got
With that
myself
said,
a
let's have a good
Elysian
debate.
Space Dust IPA.
All right, our first question, the opening question, is one for all of you.
Cheers.
Donald Trump is the first ex-president in more than 100 years to run for the White House again, and he remains popular among Republican primary voters as his legal challenges mount. Governor DeSantis, let me begin with you on this one. Speak to Republican voters who are supporting Donald Trump. Why should you and not him be the Republican nominee to face Joe Biden a year from now?
This country is in trouble, and the elites that have put us here,
Look for the
they
little
don't
smile
care
of
about
Ron
you.
DeSantis.
They don't care
A
that
little
you're having
smile
to
at the
grapple
end.
with higher grocery prices or have higher gas prices. They don't care that your family's less secure because of the open border that's allowed drugs and even terrorists to come into this country. Well, I care. I am not going to sit idly by and let this country continue its downward
I don't believe
spiral.
you, Ron.
We need leadership, and we need it now. I'll take the hits. I'll take the arrows. I'll take the slings, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about you. I will fight for you. I will make sure to lead this country's revival, and I will win for you and your family. Actions speak louder than words. We don't have time for excuses, and it's not something that we're going to be able to have all these distractions. As a veteran, I will get the job done. Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than where we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee next November, I'll get the job done. And as president, I will deliver.
Your time is up. Let me turn to Ambassador Haley.
I had comments about that.
Let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Why you and not the former president?
Well, I think you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bills. You have parents who are worried about what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. There's no transparency. We have anti-Semitism all over our college campuses, and students feel unsafe. You've got an open border where terrorists can come through.
The Republican Party's turning into the Democrats
all over us, and there are dangers around us. You know, everybody wants to talk about President Trump. Well, I can talk about President Trump. I can tell you that I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president now. I think that he put us $8 trillion in debt, and our kids are never going to forgive us for that. I think the fact that he used to be right on Ukraine and foreign issues, now he's getting weak in the knees and trying to be friendly again. I think that we've got to go back to the fact that we can't live in the past. We can't live in other headlines. We've got to start focusing on what's going to make America strong and proud. And that's what I'm focused on doing. Let's make sure we pay down our debt. I think we need an accountant in the White House. Let's make sure that we have transparency in the classroom. As a mom, I know what that means. Let's make sure we secure our borders so that our families are safe. Let's get crime down, because our families want to know that they can be safe no matter where they go. And as the wife of a combat veteran, I will tell you, a military needs to know we have our back, and we need to make sure that America is strong.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Makeup's on point.
Right, Vivek.
Here we go.
Let me just caution the audience. Let's not go down this road. We've asked you to please, restrain yourselves, and would be helpful so we can hear the candidates, because these are important issues and the voters
Mr. Holt's wearing a lot of makeup tonight.
Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please make your case. Why should you
Vivek
be the
hair is
nominee
less
and
high
not
than
the
last
former
time.
president?
That's good.
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer to the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. Sometimes the leadership asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen
He's on
Welker
fire.
here. You think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years. Was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Roberts.
No shit. Wow.
We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
And they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you?
Yes.
Audience.
Yes.
Audience, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Let's let the candidate speak. Governor
All right,
Christie,
Nick is
why
live.
you
We'll go
and
to
not
him
former
after this.
President Trump?
Well, Lester,
Big
look,
boy.
you said it at the beginning of the debate. We are dealing with extraordinarily important issues facing this country right now. We have our greatest ally in the Middle East under fire from a terrorist group that has committed to wiping them and every Jewish person in this world off the map. We have Ukraine with Vladimir Putin, a communist KGB dictator who wants to put the old band back together.
Sorry.
He's starting in Ukraine and he's going to move to the Baltics and Poland after that. We have inflation in this country that is choking.
Hang on. We're going to get Nick up. Hang on. Sorry.
Sorry if I don't have any tarot cards, bro.
Quick switch.
Every American family that wants to try to rise up and give their children a better life. And tonight, we need to decide.
I'm just reading their chat.
Which president's going to be the one to tackle the big issues? Who's going to make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world and say America is the country, the indispensable nation that makes this a safer world. And in a safer world, American innovation, American hard work has always been the thing that has driven our country to greater things. I'm going to be the president who will do those big things. We're not going to be small, and I'll say this about Donald Trump.
We're not going to be
Anybody
small.
who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country,
Right,
and it
Governor.
needs to be said plainly.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you've said former President Trump can't win. Make your case to Republican voters.
Well, certainly. None of what I would say
Why
without
is
any
he
question
here?
is that the truth of my
Good
life
question, actually.
destroys the lies of the radical
Oh,
left. We
stop,
need a president and a
Why does
candidate
Nick have a
who will
mustache?
actually help our
I think
base
he'll handle with the
solidify and
mustache.
attract
I think he
independent
works it.
voters
No, it's
into our
pathetic.
party.
He's
The
trying
Great
to force the
Opportunity
vote. It
Party
ain't
is
happening.
now
I think
winning
he looks
back
good.
African American voters and
All right,
Hispanic
I'm
voters
trying to
because
rob
we
the
are
president.
working on a foundation based on faith. Our nation is facing some deep challenges. It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values that will help this nation once again become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house
Ronald Reagan.
divided, that was Mark.
Take a
Our
shot.
founding documents.
Take a shot at McDonald's.
Oh, he's
after
wasted.
that.
Of the faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to
Eating
work for
McDonald's?
you, but America
That's
does
hilarious.
not work
He's
without a
wasted.
Shot at McDonald's
faith-filled
half and half.
Judeo-Christian foundation. I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future. Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies matter. We have to get back to being a nation that is, in fact, the city on the hill that believes
Oh,
in
come
each
on.
other enough
This is
for us
so
to fight for that
tried.
future.
Senator Scott, thank you. We're going to turn now to the challenges facing the next
that
commander in
killed
chief. You'll all be
That
fielding
did
questions
kill it,
first
Nick.
from me and the Republican Jewish Coalition, and then from Kristen and Hugh.
Republican
So as we continue forward, the Israel-Hamas war is barely a month old. Tonight, Israeli troops are fighting inside Gaza City with over 200 hostages who remain captive there, and civilian casualties mount inside Gaza. As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas.
Fuck
They're terrorists.
you, Ron.
They're massacring innocent
Fuck
people. They would wipe every
Ron
Jew
DeSantis
off the
calls for
globe if
genocide
they could.
in Gaza.
He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious. We had Floridians that were over there after the attack. He left them stranded. They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida. I sent planes over to Israel.
That was actually a boss
I brought back
move.
over
I have to give
700
DeSantis
people
credit for that.
to safety.
That was a boss
There
move.
could have been more hostages had we not acted. And I'll tell you this, I met the first plane load when they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter, and she said, my daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida.
How do you think the
So there's a
Palestinian
difference
children
between
feel?
words and deeds. We acted and we saved lives.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, what would you do? What would you be urging
This question's
Prime
gonna
Minister
be the
Benjamin
biggest jerk
Netanyahu
off
to do? Would you consider humanitarian pause, for example?
Not wrong.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them.
Nikki
Wow.
Haley
is
calls
I
for
worked on this
genocide.
every day when I was at the United
Fuck
Nations.
you, warmonger.
And we have to remember
Okay, let's
that
wait
they
to-
have to,
Vivek,
one, eliminate
I wanna hear his
Hamas,
Come on,
two,
Vivek.
support Israel
Don't
with
let us
whatever
down,
they
bro.
need whenever they need it, and 3, make sure we bring our
Can we
hostages
please
home.
suck the dick of
We need to
Israel
be
a little
very
bit harder,
clear-eyed to
Nikki?
know there
Can you
would
suck
be no
Bibi
Hamas without
Netanyahu's
Iran.
dick a little bit
There would
harder,
be no
Nikki?
Hezbollah without
Seriously?
Iran. There would not be the Houthis without Iran.
Or
And there
Israel.
wouldn't be the Iranian
Houthis, but
militias
the
in
rest of
Syria and
them.
Iraq that are trying to hit our military men and women if it hadn't been for Iran. And who is funding Iran right now? China is buying oil from Iran.
Well,
Russia
technically,
is
a
getting
president
drones
just
and
gave them
missiles
the
from
check
Iran.
cleared.
And there is
Nikki
an
is about
unholy
to
alliance.
come at her
We need to be
excitement
clear
over
eyed.
a
The
war with
last thing
Iran.
we need to do is to tell
Yeah, the
Israel
war-
what to do.
Nikki
The
Haley's
only
husband
thing we
hasn't
should be
pleased her
doing
like
is
this in a
supporting
very
them
long
and
time.
eliminating Hamas. It
That's
is
crazy.
not that Israel needs America.
I'm not
America
from
needs
Miami.
Israel.
It
They
just
are the
got
tip of
moist
the
here all of a
spear when
sudden.
it comes to this Islamic terrorism, and we need to make sure that we have their backs in that process.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy.
No, they need us. That's why we're giving
Mr.
them money.
Ramaswamy, any daylight between you and the candidates we just heard in this issue? On
Yes.
What you would tell the
Yes.
Prime Minister?
Not
Do
in terms
it,
of what I would
Vivek.
tell the prime minister,
Do it.
no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on
No.
the idea that
No!
they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as president of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our
Okay, so
responsibility.
Vivek is saying
That's
no
how we
money to
move
Israel.
forward. But
Okay,
I want to
guess
be
that's
careful
something.
to
But
avoid making
I'm
the
not thrilled
mistakes
about it.
from the neocon establishment of the past.
I just heard
Corrupt
smoke.
politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons
right.
and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe
Saying
Biden
something
sold
anti-war
off our
anyway.
foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN, bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing
Let's
and otherwise,
go.
and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice
Nikki
we
Haley's
face.
dying right
do
now.
you want
She's
a leader
dying
from a different
inside.
generation who's going to put this country
In a different
first?
country, India.
Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, thank you. Senator Scott, Senator
That was
Scott,
great.
question.
There's two of them,
You're
he
the
said.
president. You're on the
That's
phone in the Oval
awesome.
Office with the Prime Minister. You tell him what.
Well, number one, I would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu, not only do you have the responsibility and the right to wipe
Vivek is
Hamas
killing it
off of the map, we will support you. We will be there with you. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder. There will be no daylight. But I would change the station a little bit, though, and head back home to America. I would say to President Biden, diplomacy only is a weak
strategy. Appeasement leads to war. From President Obama to President Biden, Obama sent millions to Iran.
Asleep, like right
Frankly,
now.
President Biden has sent billions to Iran. That is why I've said that there's blood dripping from the hands of President Obama and President Biden. I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran. If you want to make a difference, you cannot just continue to have strikes in Syria on warehouses. You actually have to cut off the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is Iran and not simply their proxies. In order for us to have a powerful response from America, we have to be in a position of strength. As President of the United States, my foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
All right, Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, I want to get you to weigh in here.
Yeah, let's get Christie to weigh in.
These problems are so big and serious that the first thing I would say to Prime Minister Netanyahu is pretty simple. America is here, no matter what it is you need at any time to preserve the state of Israel.
Fuck you,
Remember
Chris.
that Hamas's main goal is to get rid of Israel, is to get Israel absolutely off the map. Now, there are three things I think I would say to him when he asked for advice. The first I would say is that it is absolutely your obligation to protect the territorial integrity of Israel. Secondly, to make sure you protect the security and the safety of your people. Every time something happens to compromise either one of those things, it creates greater unrest in the entire region. Second, you must go in and make sure that Hamas can never do this again. The fact is that Israel and their intelligence community failed. They failed here, and they failed the people of the state of Israel. And so we need to work closely and better together to make sure, one, that they're degraded, and two, that we know everything that's going on inside Gaza Strip when it's going on, so that something like this can't happen to kill 1,400 individuals again. And the third thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Make sure that we continue to isolate Iran. Work with the reasonable nations in the Middle East, the other Arab nations who want to partner with you, and make sure that we continue to isolate Iran so that their only friends in the world are the part of the evil foursome: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue in this vein right now with a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate. Here it is.
Why?
Given attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups on U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq, attacks that have wounded approximately 24 of our U.S. servicemen, do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
No. Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
She was like stewing on that.
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition. What we need to be doing for Iraq and Syria is, first of all, the idea that our men and women could be targeted and that we've allowed almost 100 hits to happen under Biden's watch is unthinkable. We need to understand this is Iran giving the green light, telling them what to do, and we shouldn't be doing the tit for tat like what Joe Biden has done. We need to go and take out their infrastructure that they are using to make those strikes with so they can never do it again. Iran responds to strength. You punch them one and you punch them hard and they will back off. But what we don't need is Biden falling all over himself to get back in the Iran deal. Him giving $6 billion to get 5 hostages home. Him telling Netanyahu now that he needs a pause or a ceasefire. We don't need him going and sitting there tiptoeing around Iran because he thinks they're going to do something. You don't respond to an enemy and a terrorist with fear. You respond with strength. When you do that, that's when the world pays attention, and that's when Iran stops.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, if I can continue with you. Just today, the U.S. launched another one of its limited airstrikes against targets in Syria, this time Iranian-linked facility. How far would you go militarily to hold Iran accountable?
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times.
He's like
I actually served in Iraq back in the day, and we had Al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as commander-in-chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has them out there. They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians. I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world.
Wife is more
we have to be
intimidating than Ron
strong, and
DeSantis.
we have to defend the people who defend
Like, would you be
us.
intimidated by this
Thank
guy?
you, Governor. Now
I know
our
he's your
second
governor,
and
but
final question from
No, he
Matthew
wears
Brooks
heels.
of
I
the
can't take a man
Republican
seriously
Jewish
that wears
Coalition.
heels.
Please watch.
Jewish students across the country are threatened and under attack. What do you say to Jewish students on college campuses who feel unsafe given the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism? And what do you say to university presidents and college presidents who have not met the moral clarity moment to forcefully condemn Hamas terrorism?
Mr. Ramaswamy, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely. I think the scourge of anti-Semitism across this country, including at places like my alma maters and places like Brooklyn Bridge in New York, it's sad to see, but here's what history teaches us.
I'm happy.
Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost, and we are lost. Several years ago, when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America, death to white people, death to Christians.
Hey!
Nobody was waking up back
Hey,
then. Now
let's
it's even
go.
bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really important that we do this through leadership, not censorship. Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning. Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They're fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship, telling student groups to disband, mark my words. Soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist. Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates a worse underbelly. We quell it through leadership by calling it out. These university administrators have lost their way, and we need leadership at the top in the United States of America that restores our founding values and that has no place for this kind of anti-Semitic hate. That's where I stand while respecting our Constitution.
Your time is out. Senator Scott, let me get you to weigh in on what you just said.
He did a good pick.
Thank you,
Let me just say
Naruto.
to every single university president in America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one. Number two, to every student who's come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right. Number three, any campus that allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide, you should lose your federal funding today, period. To all the students on visas who are encouraging Jewish genocide, I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not have our Jewish students in a library being told to hide on our streets in New York. A Jewish citizen has the right to walk on the streets of America with no fear. They have the right to go to college campuses, go to class, and not fear. We will restore that. I started working on anti-Semitism on college campuses in 2017, because even then there was a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We must force
I think what's happening to students on college campuses is ridiculous. I kind of agree on that, but I don't agree with censorship. But like, I just think it's bad.
DeSantis here. What do you think about what he just said?
Huge missed
I was the first
opportunity. We'll
presidential
talk about it
candidate
at
to
the
say
break.
If you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked.
So you're deporting people for free speech, Ron.
I have friends here in Florida who their kids do not feel safe even going to university campus at all outside of the state of Florida. You have Jewish students fleeing for their lives at Cooper Union. Joe Biden should have the Department of Justice on these college campuses and holding the universities accountable for civil rights violations. When you should not have money going to these places. I already acted in Florida. We had a group, Students for Justice of Palestine. They said they are common cause with Hamas. They said, we're not just in solidarity. This is what we are. We deactivated them. We're not going to use state tax dollars to fund jihad. No way. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish
ridiculous.
students
He thinks he actually
who are being
disbanded them. They're
persecuted,
still meeting. Come on.
he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia.
I love the
No, it's the anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control. That is what we have to confront. And as president, I can tell you this: we are not going to stand for this on college campuses any longer.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Governor Christie, and considering what he just said, you led a state with a sizable Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord. His mother was also stabbed more than a dozen times in what has been charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also feeling afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over that job after the September 11th attacks, I had to deal with a situation in our state that was explosive. We're the most ethnically diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent federal agents to those synagogues and we protected them. The same thing should be being done now.
They should have just
at the very
selected our
same
meat.
time, I personally went from mosque to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across the state of New Jersey. And we stopped any hate crimes that were going on either against Jewish Americans in New Jersey or Muslim Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides. Both sides need to know it, but let us never have
This is so
false moral equivalence between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Governor Christie, thank you. And Ambassador Haley, what do you say to Americans who are simply afraid right now in this current environment that we're talking about?
I think you look at the country, and the country is all out of sorts. I think, look at what these kids are dealing with on college campuses. What makes me so angry is not only do you have the kids barricaded in the library, they've said they were going to shoot up the kosher dining hall. You've got kids' dorm rooms who are being set on fire because they have something related to Israel on their doors. No person should ever feel in danger like this. And this is what I would say about our college presidents. Is if the KKK were doing this, every college president would be up in arms. This is no different. You should treat it exactly the same. Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism, and we've got to make sure they're protected. And for everybody that's protesting on these college campuses in favor of Hamas, let me remind you something. Hamas said death to Israel and death to America. They hate and would kill you too. And the idea that they're talking about genocide for the Jewish people, that's not the values of America. That's not us. We're better than that. We don't need to celebrate terrorists. We don't need to celebrate genocide. We don't need to celebrate violence towards anybody. We need to go back and soul search in our country and remember what we are about. And we are about taking care of people, not going and making them live in fear because some other terrorist activity says they want to destroy them.
That's what Israel's doing in Gaza right now.
Lester, thank you. This is another question for the entire field, so you will all get a chance to respond. But Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you. The United States has given Ukraine financial and military support since the war began more than 600 days ago. President Zelensky told me on Sunday, if Russia isn't stopped now, quote, the price will be higher for the United States, and Americans would be forced to, quote, send your sons and daughters to defend NATO. Senator Scott, where do you stand on more funding for Ukraine?
I certainly have been very supportive of Ukraine. I believe that ultimately we should make sure that the President of the United States states what is America's national vital interest in Ukraine. It is actually in degrading the Russian military. We've been very effective using our resources and our weaponry and the incredibly high price of Ukrainian blood to achieve that objective. Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news. But the American people are frustrated that they do not have a president who reminds us and tells us, where's the accountability? Where are those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? We need those answers for us to continue to see the support for Ukraine. And at the same time, I would say that a package that's been offered by the president for Ukraine and Israel, that's the wrong approach. We need to focus specifically on providing Israel with the $14 billion that they need, so that we show the world that we are 100% undeniably standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And then as we turn away from that direct support for Israel, we should go to our southern border and close our southern border with the resources necessary.
Why can't we just start with our southern border?
Sleeper terrorist
Why can't we just start
in
there?
America. Thousands of people have come from Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. If we are going to deal with the national security emergency at our border, we have to do it now.
Senator Scott, thank you. But just to be very clear, if you were president, if you were in the Oval Office today, would you sign off on more military funding for Ukraine, or would you just continue it?
No. Bottom line is we have to first have the level of accountability that allows the American people to understand where the resources have gone. Number one. Number two, after we have that responsibility taken care of and accountability, then we have an opportunity to look at the overall strategy that helps us degrade the Russian military while we use our resources, and frankly, keeping our NATO partners safe from the Russian military is absolutely essential. As you understand, Article 5 would require to support and to defend NATO, our troops on the ground. The fastest way for us to eliminate that possibility is for us to destroy, to the extent possible, the Russian military. By doing so, we actually achieve the objective of keeping our military home. And that's good news.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent new plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded.
I'm
enjoying watching the Ukraine Hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first half of this race, I was the only person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly coming around to being more cautious, as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party or the mainstream media. The regions of Ukraine that are occupied by Russia right now in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk. These are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine since 2014, that other people probably couldn't name those provinces for you. Those are the hard facts. And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time
Ramaswamy, thank you. That's time.
At least
Nikki Haley is dying.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions. Ambassador Haley, what is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
Nikki Haley's like steaming.
I'm telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see
The fact of the matter is she doesn't.
This is what I will tell
get her,
you.
Vivek. Get her. Get her.
China's hand
Ramaswamy,
because of
you
these
had
foolish
your time
policies.
to talk. The ambassador has the floor.
Thank
Ambassador,
you. The
please.
first thing I'll tell you is we all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden had done it when they first asked for it, this war would be over. But let's also remember this.
Nikki.
When you left Afghanistan in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine, don't think for a second, now everybody wants to move away from Ukraine. They'll want to move away from Israel a year from now. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. Now is the time to get partnerships. This unholy alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and China is real. There is a reason that Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China's coming after them next. There is a reason Ukrainians want us to support Israelis, because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins.
Ambassador.
We have to see the combination of the three.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor,
What
what is
reality
your
is
take? And how long should Americans be expected to help fund the war in Ukraine?
Thank you, Nick.
Kirsten, let's remember the last time that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe.
We all hate him.
It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000 Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. This is not a choice. This is the price we pay for being the leaders of the free world. And the fact is, this alliance is not
Chris,
just
it's the price we
with
pay.
Russia and China.
We pay.
Governor Haley knows this. Iran is in the middle of this as well, and so is North Korea. And they are all working to support Russia right now.
What?
And the reason they're doing it is because dictators work together.
You're pulling names out of
People
the
who
hat.
believe in democracy work together. We must stand with all of those that are standing up for democracy and freedom in this world. And by the way, let's remind everybody of this. In 1992, this country made a promise to Ukraine. We said, if you return nuclear missiles that were part of the old Soviet Union to Russia, and they invade you, we will protect you. An American promise that's 31 years old is no different than an American promise that's made tonight on this stage. We need to stand by it. And those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And
I'd like to respond.
And the absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
Governor Christie, thank you. Governor DeSantis, I'd like you to weigh in on this idea. Are you concerned that this could become a wider war if Putin is not stopped now?
Well, any suggestion by Zelensky or anyone else that we're going to eventually have U.S. troops there, I can tell the American people when I'm president, that will not happen. We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border. If you look at the threats that we face, terrorists have come in through our southern border. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to have the military, and I'm going to deport the people who've come, particularly under Biden, who've come from the Middle East, come from all these places. Now, Biden wants $105 billion. 60, most of that's Ukraine, including some of it going to pay pensions for bureaucrats and salaries. That is a totally ridiculous use of American tax dollars. He says he has money for border to try to do, and the media repeat that. When you look at it, what most of the money is money to process more illegal aliens into this country. How is that solving the problem? That's making the problem worse. And what does he do for the Indo-Pacific? A pittance. That is the top threat that we face. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share.
Nick.
And we need to get serious about the top threat that this country faces, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
So if I'm
Thank you, Governor.
He's saying DeSantis is saying that. Okay, I got you. He's right about that,
Ukraine
actually.
and Gaza and Israel to what many people are calling the new Cold War with China. And I remind the audience that it's important for our visitors at home to be able to hear you, and especially for the people in Beijing to hear you. Many Republicans believe that the Chinese Communist Party and General Secretary Xi is an existential threat to the United States. The flashpoint is Taiwan. For decades and decades, the American military, but primarily the United States Navy, has deterred an attack from China to the island state of Taiwan. but Ronald Reagan's Navy of 600 ships is gone. Now, the question to you is, and I'll start with you, Ambassador Haley, because you were in President Trump's cabinet. His goal was a 355 ship Navy. That's what he pushed for. He got to 300. It's now at 291. Is that big enough to deter and, if necessary, defeat an invasion of Taiwan?
China has the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. China has built up their military. It's not just land, air, and sea. They're doing cyber. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing space. America needs to modernize our military. We need to do everything we can. The first thing is you go and you make sure you have the backs of Ukraine. That's why the Taiwanese want us to support Ukraine, because they know that sends the biggest message to China. The second thing is we go to China and we start being tough on them. No more sales of our American soil to China, and let's take back what they've already stolen. Then you go and to the universities. No more having millions of dollars go to our universities. Then we will go and end all formal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans from fentanyl, something Ron is yet to say that he's going to do. And then we modernize our military. When we strengthen our military, when we modernize it with the focus of cyber, artificial intelligence, and space, when we make sure that we have the backs of our friends, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and we should be arming Taiwan. Make sure they have the equipment they need. Make sure they have the training they need now. There's nothing China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back. Let's make sure that we show it by making sure they have the equipment they need.
Governor DeSantis, my question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And what would you build if you were going to build more?
Not enough.
Seriously?
We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business.
They won't
post things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation.
Fucking
I've already
Nick
released a
Fuentes knows more
plan.
than
We're going
Ron
to get to
DeSantis.
355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not with not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their #1 way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institute out of our universities. We've and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
Senator Scott, you've been in the Congress since 2011. The spending has fallen over that entire period of time. Where are we going to get the money, and what would you build, and what kind of ships to deter China from attacking Taiwan?
Well, 2 major problems with the question. Number one, we do not have currently a defense industrial bank to allow us to have the kind of production that we need in order to keep America safe. Frankly, if we are not prepared to fight and engage in 3 continents at the same time, think about where we are today.
Now it's
in the Middle East, we are in the midst of trying to back our strongest ally. In Eastern Europe, we've seen our resources and our weaponry help degrade the Russian military. The Indo-Pacific, we have real challenges. The long-term threat is China. Immediate threat is our southern border. In order for us to have the military to fight 3 different continents at the exact same time, we are going to have to invest heavily in our military, but we're also going to have to invest heavily in an industrial base so that we can hit our objectives from a military perspective, not only with our ships, but also with our planes. We are so old as a military that in order for us to recalibrate, we're going to have to invest. One of the things I do in my Made in America strategy is we create more than 4 million new jobs by having high-tech manufacturing come back to America, decoupling from China, so that we focus our attention on creating that industrial revolution that will be necessary for us to achieve the goal of having a military that is ready to be lethal and come home safe.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm looking for specifics. What would you build? Where would you build it? When would they be in the water? How big would the fleet get?
First answer is end the toxic divest to invest program. For people who don't know about that, we're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building. Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. And today, if he were alive, that's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize that Ron DeSantis was correct about acknowledging Nikki Haley's tough talk when she was ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade.
Let's go.
We need politicians who are independent of the forces that increase our dependence on China. My message to Xi Jinping is this. You are done buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until you play by the same set of rules.
Ramaswamy,
you're kicked out of the WTO, and you actually have to have accountability for the COVID-19 pandemic financially.
Yes!
Which
Yes!
around the world,
Reparations!
Do you have a number and a plan?
I think that we need to increase our naval capacity by at least 20% over the course of the next several years. And be able to meet our AUKUS agreement standards. Right now, we are at risk of not even being able to meet our AUKUS standards with Australia and the UK. So what we need to do is have a plan that reverses the trajectory of the divest to invest program
Hugh, I'd like to
by
respond.
20% over the next 3 years.
Governor Christie?
You know, my first observation, Hugh, is that nobody answers your. And my second observation is these three in the middle think they're the enemy. I know China is the enemy, and that's what we should be focused on. So let's be really clear. The nuclear submarines in this United States Navy is the greatest deterrent
Do you
to
really
Chinese
think voters
aggression,
are going to
and
vote
that is the
based on
first
how many
place
new
I would go
submarines
to
you're going to
increase
create?
American
Like,
naval power.
this is a
Our
stupid
nuclear
question.
submarines are able
helps
to
me
move
sleep at night,
stealthily,
Carlin.
quietly,
God.
and effectively. And if we are going to deter China from invading Taiwan, the only way we're going to do it is to make sure that they don't know whether how many nuclear submarines from the United States of America are in the South China Sea and in that area and ready to strike on them if they decide to move on Taiwan. And so we, as our first priority, need to go directly to our nuclear sub program, Q, and we need to increase it drastically. That would be priority number one. Ships would come next, but to me, the ships are secondary choice here. The submarines are the single most important thing that we could be deterring, that we could be using to deter China. But the other thing we could do to deter China is to let them know that the blood money they're spending for Russia in Ukraine right now will not be effective, that we send Putin home with his tail between his legs and make them understand that the same fate waits for them if they decide to move towards Taiwan. With a more aggressive nuclear sub-program, we'll be able to make that threat real.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to take a brief pause now, and we'll be back to the
All
Republican
right.
presidential
Maybe
primary
Nick will
debate.
actually
Please
say
stay tuned.
something now. I've been very impressed with how little Nick went as he
Honestly,
said.
pretty good debate so
I
far.
want to see the
second
behind the
one, if
scenes
you
stuff.
remember, was
Go ahead.
terrible. It was
That's
just
probably
very
true,
poorly
Rottweiler.
run.
Probably true.
Everybody was interrupting each other, talking over each other.
It is a much better debate
They
this
didn't even
time.
do
I agree with
closing
that. They're actually getting a
statements.
chance
So if you
to
remember,
answer.
if you're with me for the second
You
one,
think
the second one was just
DeSantis
like
is going to unscrew his
disaster.
heels at the bottom of his shoes
So this
so he
one
can
was
get them
pretty good. I
elevated?
thought the moderators
have to
were on
see.
top of it. There wasn't any
gonna
interrupting.
have to see, I
with
guess.
the exception of Vivek jumped in there a little bit.
Vivek is winning.
Questions have been good.
Vivek
relevant,
is on
obviously,
fire.
You know, the Gaza war's in the news. So I think the debate's been pretty good so far. And I think Vivek is doing a really good job. I think he took my advice. I don't know if he literally saw my show because he's on top of it. He came out swinging right at the beginning, a lot stronger. He's not smiling as much. He's not as congenial or whatever. So to me, he's coming across a lot tougher, which I like.
doubt
That's
that
my
Vivek
biggest
was listening to
criticism
Nick
of
on
him
this
so
one, but-
far. or has been historically.
Who knows? Maybe
he lets Tim Scott and Nikki Haley walk.
Predictions on Nick's mustache. Is he going to grow it
I
out?
like Nick's mustache. I
that.
think it looks
was a lot tougher
distinguished.
tonight.
Okay, I
The other
like
thing
the
is,
mustache.
his
It's
answers
not
are pretty
full.
unbelievably
Like what I'm
good.
asking
Well, he
is,
just started growing it
it's-
out.
it's
He
tricky
just
because, of
started
course,
growing it like 3 days ago.
Honestly,
Leave
none
him
of these
alone.
candidates can really come out against
No.
Israel and just be.
I will continue picking on the
I
boy.
recognize
My
that.
question
you know,
is,
you know what I'm about. You know
my question,
how I choose
my
to,
question is he
talk
going
on
to do
these
like a
issues, but
Mobius
running
style,
for
which is
national
from the
office
hairline
at a time
down,
like this,
up
it's
again?
suicide to be
Is he going to
anything
like
but
have
I don't
it be
know.
bold and thick, rocking a
less.
Burt Reynolds? Is he going to do?
And so I thought
the
Vivek,
goatee?
he navigated it
Is
in
he
sort
going
of
to do
a
like a
clever
soul
way.
patch?
Like he was
Is
asked
he going
about
to do
the
muffin chops?
colleges.
I
said-
like it better than I
sort of
I used
did
to
a
think it
direct
looked
pivot
gay.
and said,
I'll
well,
admit there was a
anti-Semitism
minute
is
that I
one
thought it
thing,
looked gay, but
but they
I'm
were
coming around to the
anti-white and
mustache on him. I think it
anti-Christian
looks
first.
good.
No,
think I've ever heard
that's just his
anti-white
flannel
on the
shirt that's
debate
making him
stage
look gay right
I
now. The
like
mustache
the
has
flannel.
nothing to
I
do
think
with
he
it.
looks much better in a flannel shirt than he
So
looks
that
in a
was
suit
really
and
good to
tie
hear, and I
because
thought it
Nick
was a
has
clever
horrible
pivot. And
ties.
the other thing, which is key,
Horrible
is
ties.
he said he's against
They're like his
censorship,
dad's
and that's
ties.
really important.
I think he
He
looks
said
much
we have to
better
draw
in
the
this
line
shirt.
and say that we can oppose.
Like
I love how this is how our
inside
debate
rhetoric,
commentary has devolved
which is
into like
whatever.
Nick
He said, but we
Fuentes'
can't
fashion
censor it.
choices.
And that's
Like,
really
no,
critical
I'm not
because that
talking.
is
I
what
can give two
DeSantis
shits
has
about the flannel
done, and
shirt.
that's
It's the
what
lack
they
of a
would like to
stash I
implement
find
at the national
offensive.
level.
He
So,
just started growing it
protecting the
out.
First
Leave him
Amendment on this is
alone.
protecting criticism
He could
of
at least
Israel
pull
and independence,
like a
to some
Wilson
extent,
from
of
Home
action
Improvement,
from
hide
Israel
behind a
in
fence
American life.
while he's
So
growing it
that was
out or
good.
something.
I also thought his
because
statement on Ukraine was
that's
phenomenal. I
pathetic.
mean, he really
He,
went for the
he looked
jugular
like he
on
just got
Ukraine. He got a
pegged
great
and,
attack
and
across
got
from Nikki
like
Haley.
a dirty Sanchez.
I
in the
don't
process.
agree.
I think he said
I
about,
vehemently disagree.
He had one other really excellent answer. His opening statement
He
was
looks like a
great.
70s porn
I
star.
think-
No, Ron
I
Jeremy's
think he looks good
stash
in
was
flannel.
thicker back.
God.
Nikki Haley went for Trump.
Like Vivek's
Thought it
on
was-
fire
I
is
said
doing a
at the
great
beginning,
job,
sort of
and we're
innovation.
talking about Nick.
Trump was the right guy for the right time, but he
Well,
wasn't
it
for that.
happens.
And you know
This
what
is-
that
we're
represents
watching
to me?
him for
Nikki Haley is
flavor. For
becoming
flavor.
competitive. I
Peyton
think
says
that she's
Vivek literal
competing
plan and
for
roadmap for
this
dealing with
spot to
China and
take on
Taiwan,
Trump on behalf of
China
the
and the
establishment.
neocons. We
She's
need to
competing
arm
with
Taiwan.
DeSantis for this. And
Indeed,
DeSantis
Peyton.
is very
Thank you.
cautiously
So, like, can you-
avoiding
No.
attacking Trump.
No,
too
we're not
directly
explaining
because he
that. No,
recognizes that
deny.
Like next Zoom call
it
about,
would be very
I'll be happy
difficult
to
for him to win
explain
the
it.
nomination if he goes all in on Trump.
But in
Haley
regards to
went in on Trump in a
DeSantis,
unique
you
way
know,
where
like
she
let's
sort of
get back to the
recognized
debate
Trump's
here.
success in the
In
beginning and his
regards to the
popularity, but
anti-Semitism and everything,
criticized him for his record.
DeSantis.
What she
oh shit,
represents
we're back
is
on.
the
I can't talk about
backsliding
it.
We're back.
towards
Turn up the volume,
establishment, where
Nick.
She said he's getting weak in the knees on foreign policy.
Draw out your stash
And
more,
what that
boy.
means is
I think
like
he's
too
working on it,
anti-war
Kino.
to be a
Leave him
Republican.
alone.
He needs to
Republican
focus
Party,
on
as
that
evidenced by
area.
this debate, is going to be the pro-war party again against
Turn
Russia,
up the
China,
volume,
Iran.
Nick.
Anyway, but we're back here. Vivek's doing
Carlin,
a
I'll be
phenomenal
right
job.
back.
I'm giving him like 9 out of 10 right now.
I agree.
Very
Vivek
good.
is doing
who's
great.
chairman of the House Bipartisan Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, published a long essay on TikTok following the flooding of
We'll be back.
Hamas propaganda onto TikTok accounts across the United States. Chairman Gallagher called it shocking. He called the app predatory, controlled by America's preeminent adversary, one used to push propaganda and divide America. It's spyware, he said, a means of surveillance. Governor Christie, do you agree with Chairman Gallagher? And if so, would you ban or force the sale of TikTok?
I agree 100% with Chairman Gallagher. And let me say this. TikTok is not only spyware. It is polluting the minds of American young people all throughout this country. And they're doing it intentionally. And when you saw what happened in the last few weeks with all of this anti-Semitic, horrible stuff that their algorithms were pushing out at a gargantuan rate, this is China trying to further divide the United States of America. And this is one of the big failings among many of the Trump administration. He talked tough about TikTok. I heard him do it many times. But when it came down to it, he did not ban them when when he could have and should have. And now since then, we've had an additional nearly 6 years of this type of poison being put out throughout the United States, even putting aside the spying, which we know is going on in the theft of American personal data and information.
What a joke.
Every app does that,
in
Chris.
my first week as president, we would ban TikTok. They want to go ahead and sell it?
That is
Let them go
dangerous.
ahead and sell it. But I'll tell you another reason we would do it. Facebook's not in China.
How are you banning TikTok?
X is not in China.
They have servers.
We're not permitting a free flow of information to the Chinese people from our social media companies, yet we just open the door and let them do what they're doing. TikTok should be banned because they are poisoning American minds, and I would do it week one.
Use
Thank you,
it,
Governor.
like...
I want to go to Governor DeSantis. Would you ban or force the sale of TikTok, regardless of whether or not China allowed American apps to operate in China?
Yes, I think that China is the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose.
Oh, for
and in
fuck's
order to
sake,
do that,
Ron,
it's not just
come on.
military. It's economic
We win,
and it's
they
cultural.
lose.
And as the dad of a 6'5" and a 3-year-old, I'm concerned about the data that they're getting from our young people and what they're doing to
about
pollute the
American companies
minds
like Google,
of our
who
young
does the
people.
same
These
shit,
kids
Ron.
get these devices and they have a mind of their own. And I know a lot of parents are looking, it's hard to even keep it out. China's obviously the most extreme, but this is happening with other things. So we are going to do that, and we are going to make sure to protect the American people. It's a full spectrum approach to be able to fend China off. Yes, military deterrence. Yes, economic decoupling, but also their role in our culture. If we ignore that, we're not going to be able to win the fight.
Thank you, Governor. Ambassador Haley, speak to the parents out there. There are probably TikTok apps on half the phones in this auditorium.
No, I'm going to speak to the fact that 2 people hit me and you didn't let me respond. So let's just talk about
doing the entire commercial.
About the Chinese land from 10 years ago. Yes, I brought a fiberglass company 10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your Economic Development Agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses.
She couldn't help herself.
Not only that, you have a company that is
has a
manufacturer
temper, man. I
of
wouldn't wanna be
Chinese
her
military
husband.
planes. You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now, one which is 12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
years
didn't give
ago.
them anything.
What's your story?
No,
I abolished that
Put down the
agency
shirt.
that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise
don't let him
Florida,
fight. No.
We abolished it, and of course, we
Stop
banned
it.
China from buying
No,
land.
I don't care if these
Not
two
only
fight,
a
whatever.
great
Go check.
recruiting
Vivek
tool,
is
we're
like-
banning
Vivek
them
is like-
from purchasing
You
land.
struck
at
the
all. So
website
we stood
last
up and
week.
we've
Thank you,
done the
Ambassador
right thing
Haley.
in Florida.
Mr. Ramaswamy, we've talked about this.
That was
You
a waste.
campaign on
Waste of
TikTok.
an answer.
How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
We don't.
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first. The next generation of Americans will use it. That's actually the point. Yeah, her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth. The easy answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a U.S.-owned company. So this is the problem when you have Republicans that temporarily go the way the winds blow, and now it's popular to talk tough on China. When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather fans of the right policy. Get to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly doing it. Cut the virtue signaling. The fact of the matter is Democrats are on TikTok today. The only person, one of the few people who is putting up content the way the actual algorithms work, speaking for pro-Israel views or others, is
Ambassador
me. And I predict
Haley,
more Republicans will join it. But stop U.S. companies from turning over data to Chinese companies. That's the real
Moderators
answer,
like
not the virtue
Kristen
signal.
don't get to respond to personal attacks, but you do.
Thank you very much. You know, when he talks about me praising China, he doesn't know the fact that the reason China was praised was because I negotiated with China and Russia the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation. That is literally the reason North Korea stopped testing ballistic missiles. So I said China did good on their
Bullshit,
part.
they're still
That
testing.
was a
You said they
negotiation
were
you
our great
could
friend
never
is
do.
what you said, Nikki. Those are your words, not mine. And so just own up to it.
You would never
You can
have been
change
able
your
to
mind.
get
That's
that
allowed.
negotiation
But don't
done.
lie to the people about
I
what
have
you've said
fought
or what you've done
against
in South
China
Carolina.
my
You have brought
entire
them to South
career at
Carolina.
the
Ron is
United
right about
Nations.
that.
Every day I fought China, and I did it
Look at the
by
actual
making sure
hard
no
facts.
one
You
could
brought
get
them to this
any
country.
agency
You're
heads in
closing
UN.
China.
I did it by making sure that we called them out on human rights. I did it by making sure that we held them accountable on everything that they did. That's the reason we got out of the Human Rights Council. That's the reason we called them out. And there's not been a day I haven't stopped.
Senator Scott, it is your turn.
He's doing really good. Millions made afterwards.
Everybody else is hanging on to the rules here, Mr. Ramaswamy. Senator Scott.
Thank you. We should.
Now Tim Slott's going to make a
Without
statement.
any question, what we should do is ban TikTok, period. Now, we saw under former President Trump, he tried to ban TikTok twice, but was struck down by our federal courts. If you cannot ban TikTok, you should eliminate the Chinese presence on the app. Period. We also should provide, in my parents' Bill of Rights, we give parents the opportunity to give their kids permission under 14 to be on those apps. I think it's incredibly important for us as Americans to take back control of the information, especially of our kids. Where does it go? We should know that. One of the ways that we get to know that is by having a parental consent. But if we can eliminate TikTok, that is a first step. But it's not just TikTok. China continues to spy on our kids, but they're also buying our farmlands. We talked about that several times there. We have to make sure that we use the tools that are in our toolkit to stop China from buying farmland near our bases. The third thing we have to do is make sure that they stop stealing our intellectual property. They're literally stealing our IP to compete against us.
True.
My administration, we stopped that day one, and we start making sure that we create six-figure income for jobs made in America through my strategy.
Kristen.
Thank you so much. We're now going to talk about Venezuela, where millions have fled political and economic turmoil.
Long live freedom, damn it.
Venezuelan immigrants are settling
debate
right
about America
here
or
in
what?
Florida.
Every
Former
question's been
President
about
Trump and President Biden have taken different approaches to Nicolas Maduro's regime with little result. Former President Trump put economic pressure on Venezuela and backed one of Maduro's rivals. President Biden temporarily eased sanctions to encourage electoral reforms. Governor DeSantis, do you see the political situation
Good question,
in Venezuela
Rottweiler. I don't
as a
think any of them
threat
have
to
an
the
answer to
United
that.
States, and what would your approach be?
We should never rely on Venezuela for oil like Biden has had to go beg. I'm going to unleash all of America's energy potential on day one.
Good.
I'm taking all the Biden regulations, the Green New Deal, ripping it up and throwing it in the trash can where it belongs. We're going to lower your gas prices. We're going to create jobs. We're going to lower energy costs. But we're also going to be more energy independent and secure. We'll choose Midland over Moscow. We'll choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we'll choose Bakken over Beijing. That is good for America's national security. Biden's Green New Deal, that's good for Venezuela, it's good for Russia, it's good for Iran, and it's good for China. So I would turn the screws on the Venezuelan regime. I think it's a corrupt, dictatorial regime, and we should never go hat in hand begging for oil from them.
Just to be clear, would you reimpose the sanctions?
Yes, absolutely.
Ambassador Haley, what would your approach be?
You know, I stood on the Simon Boulevard Bridge and watched thousands of Venezuelans cross for hours in the hot sun, holding their babies to get the one meal they might get that day, going from Venezuela to Colombia. They were fleeing socialism and begging for freedom. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to sanction Maduro. We shouldn't be getting dirty oil. And Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary priority status, which is just going to have more of them come. But on the energy side, it cracks me up that Ron continues to do this. He has opposed fracking. He's opposed drilling. Last time he said it wasn't true, and everybody found out that it was true. He opposed it before Florida voters even voted on it. He was praised by the Sierra Club, and you're trying to make up for it and act like you weren't a liberal when it comes to the environment. You were. You always have been. Just own it if that's the case. But don't keep saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that. Our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree with Nikki Haley. I don't think it's a good idea to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You banned fracking.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that was fire.
Oh, thank you. Let's turn to one of the biggest issues for voters. That, of course, is the economy. This is a question that will go to all of you. An Iowa voter recently told NBC News, "How am I going to make sure my pantry is stocked without breaking the bank?" You've all said the best way to deal with rising prices is to cut government spending. But that would take time to play out, and Americans are struggling right now. Senator Scott, I'll start with you. What would you do the moment you take office to help Americans manage the cost of living? So we're talking about short term here.
My mother was a single mother who raised me and my brother in a very challenging economic situation.
And Ronald
The first thing I can tell you is that when your gas prices are 40% higher right now than they were just a little over 2 years ago, that's not a problem for my mama. That was a crisis. The first thing I would do as president of the United States is I would sign the XL Keystone Pipeline and start seeing resources flow. Second thing I would do is make sure that there's certainty and predictability so that those folks who have the leases in our country would have the certainty and predictability to go ahead and become energy independent. We should focus not just on being energy independent, we should focus on being energy dominant. America is the home to more energy resources than any other country on the planet. We can reduce the price of energy, we can reduce the price of food and the price of electricity if we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan that is embedded. The Made in America strategy creates 10 million new jobs in 3 different areas. One is innovation. Second is the high-tech manufacturing. And the third is the energy economy. We have an opportunity as Americans to actually export the surplus energy that we create
I
in
agree.
our
This
nation
is like infinitely better,
disconnect
infinitely
from
less
China
painful than
and
the last
from
one.
murderous
Well, let's not
dictators
give
and
NBC too
tyrants
much
around
credit.
the
Your
world.
time is up, but let me
Yep.
just follow up. The idea of pumping gas, of turning on pipelines, that doesn't make gas cheaper that day. I'm talking about you become president. What can you do specifically to help people feel better about their situation or be better with their situation?
Well, actually, it does, to be honest with you. The way that the economy works is it works on the ability to anticipate excess supply versus the demand. When that happens, confidence drives our prices down because we know there's going to be a greater surplus. When you allow for those who have leases to actually start drilling, to start using those leases for more energy excavation, you put our economy in the strongest position. And as a result of that, prices start going down. That is the kind of economy that, as president of the United States, I would lead this nation to making sure that we first use the resources in our own country and not going outside of our country in order to achieve our objective. You know, Proverbs 22:7 reminds us that the borrower is slave to the lender. We have become an indentured servant too often to countries like China. By having an energy economy, we start allowing this nation to once again return.
Senator, thank you. Let me ask the same question to
doing
Governor
as good as he
DeSantis.
can.
Can you give us some? You ticked off a number of things a moment ago, but some specific examples of ways that would put people on a better economic footing right away.
So I started off working minimum wage jobs. I did $6 an hour as an electrician's assistant. I worked all kinds of things to be able to get through school. And I did that because I believed in America, if you work hard and get the most out of your God-given ability, you can get ahead. And what's happening now, many of you are working hard and you're falling further and further behind.
I'll be right back.
I've met people
Hold
in
down the
Iowa,
fort.
New Hampshire, and all across the country who've talked about all the burdens that they're facing with the rising prices. And I've heard from multiple people the same story. When they go grocery shopping, what they now do is they figure out what they have to take out of the cart once it's ringing up, because it rings up so much faster and so much higher at the cash register that they can't afford the full cart of groceries anymore. We have to restore the American dream in this country. What can you do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics. I'm going to rip it up. I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs. That is going to give the economy breathing room. And I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic. They botched it. Congress botched it. Both parties are to blame. Fed should focus on stable prices. They are not an economic central planner for the American people.
Governor, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, weigh in on this. Ways that you can improve people's financial condition in the short term.
Right. And as a CEO, the economic question is core to my vision and policy prescription for this country. Increase the supply of everything. It's the law of supplies and demand. Increase the supply of energy. That brings down the cost of energy, grows the economy. drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Increase the supply of labor in this country. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work. Increase the supply of housing. People don't talk about this one in the Republican Party. The land
In
use
New Hampshire, this
restrictions
is
are
important.
constricting the supply of housing. That's making housing more
Supply of
expensive
housing
for
is
ordinary Americans
non-existent in
across
New
this
Hampshire.
country.
It's
So that's the
damn
true
near
answer. And I think
impossible.
it takes a CEO in the White House who actually understands this to get this done. Because Americans at home, they know the Bidenomics is a lie. Prices are going up. Interest rates and mortgages to buy your home are going up. But wages have remained flat. That's the hard diagnosis for our economy. And this is about more than just our economy. I say this as a member of my generation. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. The reason my generation has lost our sense of national pride, in part, is because people in my generation feel like the American dream isn't available to them. And part of the reason why is we burdened them with four-year college degrees that did not serve their head start on the American dream. People will be more proud of a country if we're all making more money in that country. This is how we revive national pride and our identity, and it will take a CEO in the White House with zero-based budgeting, by the way, to take on the federal debt to get this
Let me
job
turn
done.
to Governor Christie on that.
That was good. Good
Look,
answer.
Lester, part of the entire premise of the question, and I agree with Tim on this, is absolutely energy is the key to this because it drives every one of those other prices.
Oh, please.
You know, now
Energy
food
is
gets to
key
your
because
grocery
you're all
store,
getting paid
it gets
by
trucked.
energy. But it
And
is
those
true
truckers
that
have to
it
pay
brings
for fuel,
prices
for the
down,
higher
but
fuel prices. And when you go ahead
it's
and you
also the
tell
Federal
people,
Reserve. It's
we
also
are
the
going
COVID
to
recession.
unleash every bit of American energy, every bit of its potential, what happens in the futures markets? The prices go down because those people who are believing that the Biden program will continue are the ones who are bidding this up. And let me tell you the other place that's bidding it up, in the Middle East. And so if you don't believe that making sure that Israel and that Israel situation that's going on right now isn't resolved and resolved quickly as President of the United States and bring stability back, that will also not permit countries like Saudi Arabia and others to be able to jack their prices as well in what they say is in response to a crisis, when it's really what it's in response to is putting more money in their pockets. When they have an American president who knows that Israel must be defended not with humanitarian pauses and not with suggestions for ceasefire, but with letting them know we will supply them with everything they need, that will also bring stability to the market. Energy is the key to bringing this down. It's what every American family needs when they turn on their lights, fill up their car, and go to the grocery store. And we need to do that first and foremost. That's the short-term answer.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me come at this from a slightly different direction. Americans in rural communities are being especially squeezed by inflation right now. An Iowa State University study found that last year inflation cost rural households about an extra $5,000. How would you specifically help rural Americans who are suffering right now, Ambassador?
Well, I'm a product of rural America. I grew up in rural South Carolina. And I can tell you what we're seeing now in America is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have to go and start beefing up the middle class. And the first thing I would do is I will eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. We'll cut taxes on the middle class. But we have to stop this spending binge that's happening by Republicans and Democrats in Congress. I will make sure, one, we claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we'll go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that exist, one out of every $7. We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't go back to pre-COVID levels. That will cut trillions and allow us to be safe. We also need to be not energy independent, energy dominant. We are blessed with resources. Let's do it. But the reason no one should give you a number, Hugh, on the amount of ships in the Navy is because in a few years, our interest expense is going to be more than our defense budget. So no one can give you that number realistically without first tackling what's happening with the financial situation. It would be a false number to give you that.
I know.
We have got to understand this is a crisis. It is a national security concern. If we don't deal with what's going to happen with that interest expense in a few years, we're going to look like Japan. And we can't let that happen. The strong dollar matters.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Did she say Japan's
Americans
fucking awesome.
could see Americans could see their Social Security benefits drastically cut in the next decade because the program is running out of money. Former President Trump has said, quote, under no circumstances should Republicans cut entitlements. Governor Christie, first to you, you have proposed raising the retirement age for younger Americans. What would that age be specifically, and would you consider making any other reforms to Social Security?
Sure, and we have to deal with this problem. Now, look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s, I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know if out there tonight, and if you're watching Warren, I don't know if Warren Buffett is collecting Social Security, but if he is, shame on you. You shouldn't be taking the money. There are a lot of programs in this country that we all pay for
into it
that we don't get a direct benefit from. Food stamps is one of them. I've never, fortunately in my life, ever had me or my family on food stamps, but I'm glad it's there so that no one in this country goes to bed hungry at night if they have availability to that program. But I don't get a direct benefit. The fact is, on Social Security, remember why it was established. It was established as a safety net program to make sure that no one would grow old in this country in poverty. That's what we got to get back to. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security.
Governor, can you give me a specific
paid
age,
into the
69,
system. They are
70,
entitled
what
to
would
that
the age
money.
be?
No, look, that's going to be a part of a negotiation with Congress, Kirsten. And hell, I'm not going to start negotiating until I get there.
All right, Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in on this, because you said in June that you would be open to raising the retirement age. Have you determined what that age would be specifically, and what other reforms are you looking at?
So first of all, any candidate that tells you that they're not going to take on entitlements is not being serious. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Right now,
They
you
said
have
that 10 years
Ron
ago.
and Trump joining Biden and Pelosi saying they're not going to change or do any sort of entitlement reform. What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say, we're going to change the rules. You change the retirement age for them. Instead of cost of living increases, we should go to increases based on inflation. We should limit benefits on the wealthy. Bernie Marcus can tell you he hates getting that check. Limit the benefits on the wealthy, and then expand Medicare Advantage plans. Seniors love that. And let's make sure we do that so that they can have more competition. That's how we'll deal with entitlement reform, and that's how we'll start to pay down this debt.
And can you give me a specific age? Have you determined the age?
Again, you have to work
Whatever
with
age
Chris.
Nikki
What I can
is.
tell you is it's going to be those in their 20s just coming into the system, and it should reflect more of life expectancy. It doesn't do that now.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy, have you determined if you would touch entitlements and Social Security? What, if any, reforms are you looking at?
So this is really important right now. We're working within the last window I believe we will have to actually fix this problem while still leaving Social Security and Medicare benefits for current seniors intact. I'll tell you how. The other candidates assume, like Nikki, that it can't be done. And on her math, she's right about it. But her math assumes $7 trillion of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Minus that, our national debt would be $26 trillion right now.
All right,
Then you go to zero-based budgeting, which I've proposed as a CEO. It's how I've run businesses. It's how many CEOs run businesses. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with zero as the baseline, and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe. In the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Shut down redundant agencies that should not exist. Deliver economic growth
I just had an orgasm. Oh my
we
God,
can get to 3,
that's so
4,
exciting.
Maybe even
No comment.
5% GDP growth if we really take the regulatory shackles
so
off of our
good.
economy.
And
And against that backdrop, I believe this is our last best window to be able to take care of our national debt problem through those severe measures, including sacrificing the foreign wars that many bloodthirsty members of both parties have a hunger for. That's the one secret for how we're going to be able to do this, and that requires discipline. So we can't have the first conversation we were having, sending foreign aid willy-nilly to countries whose national debt per capita is less than ours.
Thank you,
But if we
Mr.
do this
Ramaswamy.
correctly, I think this is our last window, and it'll take a CEO from the next generation to do it.
Thank you very much. Senator
Yes,
Scott, weigh in
Vivi.
here. What are you
Great
looking at to
answer.
keep Social
Good
Security
answer.
sustainable?
The bottom line is a simple one. We have to grow our economy and cut our spending. Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather
my mama
receiving
said,
Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security. The fact is that we're spending today about $1.1 trillion of Social Security, about $750 billion on Medicare, about $300 billion on Medicaid, about $400 billion on veterans benefits, $1.7 trillion on annual appropriations. If we're going to actually tame this tiger, the way you do it is not by picking on seniors who have paid into a program that deserve their money coming back out to them. The way you deal with it is, number one, you have to grow your economy. My plan, Made in America, creates 10 million new jobs, grows our economy at 5%. By doing so, you add trillions of dollars of economic activity and billions of dollars to your treasury. Number two, you have to cut taxes. When we cut taxes in 2017, I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everybody said, well, guess what? Revenue will go down. Well, in 2018, after we wrote it in 2017, what happened? Revenue went up by 3%, and the next year it went up by another 3%. So what we know is that the Laffer curve still works, but the lower the tax, the higher the revenue. And finally, if we're going to deal with it, we have to take our annual appropriations back to pre-2020, pre-COVID levels of spending, which would save us about $500 billion in the next budget window. By doing that, we deal with Social Security and our mandatory spending.
Thank you, Senator. Very quickly, would you raise the retirement age? Would you be open to raising the retirement age, or do you rule that out?
All you have to do is go to a farm in Iowa.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yes
you
or
and
no,
I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no,
answer
though?
is no. But listen to this though, before you go on. Thank you. The fact of the matter is that the more physical your labor, a year or 2 or 3 more is actually challenging to the physical body. You and I might have a different perspective, but for those farmers, they're working night and day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Governor DeSantis, finally to you. Would you be
Scott's
open
not
to
actually
raising
wrong.
the retirement age, and
He's
how
not
would you keep
actually
Social Security
wrong.
sustainable?
Well, look, as governor of Florida, I know a
He's
few
not
people on Social
wrong.
Security, and I know it's important. My grandmother lived till 91, and Social Security was her sole source of income, and that's true for a lot of seniors throughout this country. So what I'd say to seniors in America, promise made, promise kept. I understand what you're going through with the rising prices, and you need that Social Security check. So we'll make sure to get that done. What can you do to help shore up Social Security? One of the things that's causing problems is the inflation. We have to reduce inflation. When you have higher inflation, the seniors get a cost of living adjustment, which means the program's spending more, but it doesn't cover the increase in the actual inflation rate. We also do need to get to at least 3% growth. You're never going to be able to have issues, be able to solve the budget without that. But I would note this. Congress for decades took money from Social Security. Social Security would have more tax revenue than it put out. They would take it and then they'd write an IOU to Social Security. Congress has a lot of dirty hands on this. I'm going to force Congress to stop spending so much money. And you know, one thing we have to do, we talk about the retirement age, is just something that's changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you raise the retirement age?
When life expectancy is declining, I don't see how you could raise it the other direction. So it's one thing to peg it on life expectancy, but we have had a significant decline in life expectancy in this country, and that's just the fact.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Thank you, candidates. And we will be right back.
All right,
a quick
another break
from Miami.
Vivek still winning.
That's a good debate. You know,
Vivek's on
I
fire.
actually don't mind this
Lost
debate.
opportunity
It cut out
on
all
his
that
part
debate
with
I
this
mean,
last line of
listening
questioning.
to- Who is that guy?
All he had to
Burgum,
say
Doug Burgum,
was
and,
taxation
Mike
is
Pence,
theft.
and, it's a lot of idiocy.
The whole audience would have been
This
in
debate was
uproar.
pretty good. I mean, these are the guys. These are the most well-spoken.
I mean, I still think Vivek's doing good. Nikki Haley is steamed. She is steamed. She's like the punching bag of this debate.
Everybody's at the top of their game.
What does
Like-
Nick have to say? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like I can't wait to see the headlines tomorrow with Vivek and Scott talking shit about Nikki while she's having her.
Oh, I know. That was like, I want to know what they said.
That was glorious.
What
I
did
want
they
that to be on
say?
a baseball card. If there's just those two just passing notes, talking shit. It's like, hey, you want to get this? Like, no, rock paper scissors. I'm like, they were legit, just mocking her while she was talking.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What does Nick have to
like
say?
That because we don't have industry. And Vivek is also right that our supply chains run through China. So theoretically, if we wanted to confront China,
I hope they talk about education. They haven't talked about education yet.
We get radar and sensors and all kinds of
things.
Thank
you, Queen Beth of the chat.
Even down to the raw materials that they have. So
appreciate it.
I agree with all that stuff. And I agree on the entitlements. I mean, it's just true that the what is the expression about the
I'm so happy to see Hercules in the commercial behind Nick.
We're finally reaching the end of the fiscal problem here. And Nikki Haley said it, which is that the interest payment's going to be bigger than the defense budget soon. And Social Security and Medicare going bankrupt. Everybody knows that. And the deficits have been out of control ever since COVID, for the past 3 years. And DeSantis is right about the quantitative easing. So they're all right about that. They're all right about entitlements being too high and revenue being too low and spending being out of control, the money's being loose. That's all true. And I agree with most of that. I agree with Vivek. I honestly probably align the most with Vivek. I think that America does not have its full economic potential with regulation, with housing, with energy.
Oh, Rumble has a commercial in the debate.
The other thing is tariffs.
Huh?
No, that's the other thing. Nobody talks about
how in the fuck does Rumble have all this money, but their platform sucks so badly?
Back into the conversation.
I don't know. It's like I was watching Crowder when he released the 3-page manifesto. Which, by the way, who the hell writes a 3-page manifesto?
It's not 3 pages. They just released all
exactly.
of it.
Like that's my point. You know, it's like
because they wanted people to have an impression.
That was a big part.
Well, it was like, well, he cost 7 cops their, their jobs. Take that for what you will. But like the question, to your point, you're right. Rumble's infrastructure sucks. During Crowder's own live stream, who has an exclusive deal with Rumble, I lost audio like every other, 2.5 to 5 minutes, where the audio will just.
So anyway, so I agree with
Rumble sucks so bad, and from a streamer perspective, it's like the most annoying for reasons I'm not going to go into. But like, I hate it so much. They don't invest in their platform. This is not going to last.
You know, this is coming from the national security state.
I really like the idea of the thing.
All the social media companies are doing that. TikTok is just the best.
Like on paper, I agree with what you're trying to do, bro. I got you.
It is attracting
but the execution's
more
garbage
more quickly than any other major platform in the world. There's poison coming from YouTube.
Here we go. Downtown Miami and oh shit.
What do you think Snapchat's for?
Snapchat's our Deco district that they're just showing on Miami Beach.
Shut up, Nick. Turn up the volume.
Silence. Lack of stats.
But they're saying that because it's Chinese. So no one wants to take on big tech because they're probably receiving money from big tech.
That's
big
true.
Tech's powerful.
Turn up the volume, Nick.
Going after TikTok.
You ain't got no mustache, bro.
Fuck Dave Rubin.
TikTok is good.
Dave Rubin, what a bitter little cunt that guy is.
On the terror watch list. It can mean the burden on states from having migrants move into their states from the southwestern border. But I want to talk about opioids specifically and fentanyl. And I'll start with you, Senator Scott. Tens of thousands of Americans' families have suffered a death to fentanyl. Young people sometimes die taking one pill. What can you do as Commander-in-Chief on the first day to stop fentanyl and the waterfall of it into this country?
Number one, we should close our southern border.
You just sound like that,
$2 billion, we could close our southern border. For an additional $5 billion, we could use the currently available military technology to surveil our southern border to stop fentanyl from crossing our border. I've already led on legislation that would sanction the Mexican cartels. If you remember the path, the precursors come from China. Then they are manufactured in Mexican labs, and then the Mexican cartels bring them across our border. By sanctioning their accounts and eliminating their cash, we starve them of what they need. Number one, closing our southern border makes it nearly impossible to get in. The military-grade technology is a backup, making sure that we not only stop 70,000 deaths in the last 12 months because of fentanyl, it also allows us to deal with the human trafficking travesty that is entering in our country in the same path. If we are going to deal effectively with 100,000 overdose deaths in our country and the 70,000 that is directly linked to fentanyl, we have to deal with our ports of entry and deal with our southern border. If we do that effectively, we have started reducing the challenge from the outside, and then we have to deal with the challenge on the inside, which seems to be connected to a mental health crisis that is spreading throughout our nation.
Governor Christie, Senator Scott just mentioned ports of entry. 90% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is seized at ports of entry. We don't know what's coming in across the open southern border. You've been a United States attorney. You've taken on cartels. Can it really be done quickly? What would you do as president?
It can be done quickly in two ways, Hugh, on fentanyl. The first way is exactly as you suggest, at ports of entry. We have to beef up what our law enforcement has in terms of technology. I would invest in that as president. We need to make sure that law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to do it. Secondly, on day one, I would sign an executive order that would send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol, both at ports of entry and at the open ports of our border. Customs and Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. There's 200,000 encounters a month over the last 11 months. We simply do not have the man and woman power at the border to be able to deal with it. And so dealing with both law enforcement and you're right, we have done this, we can do this, but we got to give them the tools to do it. And technology is one of the biggest tools that we don't have enough of at the ports of entry. Now, we also need to lower demand, Hugh, in this country. And the way to lower demand is to start treating people again. You know, we started to do this before COVID, and we haven't done enough of it. And for every family out there tonight who has lost a loved one to fentanyl or to any other type of opioid overdose, what you know is all you want is a chance for them to win their lives back. When I'm president of the United States, we're going to call this what it is. It is a disease like heart disease, diabetes, or any other disease like cancer that can be treated, should be treated. We not only have to stop supply, but we have to lower demand and save lives.
Governor. Governor DeSantis, you have talked about using United States Special Forces to attack the cartels where they manufacture the
war on
chemicals
drugs
that come from
continues.
China.
Great.
How often? How many?
For real.
What does that look like?
Well, first, I was speaking to a dad who lost a son to fentanyl overdose. Son wasn't a drug addict. He had taken some pill that happened to be laced with fentanyl, and it was a fatal overdose. And when he told me, obviously the pain of losing a child is as bad as it gets, but he said what was salt in the wounds is that these elites in D.C. don't give a damn about what's going on in this country.
Then what
They
makes you
don't
different?
care that we have tens of thousands of opioid deaths, that the fentanyl's pouring in. They are not taking the type of action we need to. We're declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to deport people who came illegally. And I'm even going to build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it, like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build the wall. But we are going to designate the cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations or something similar to that. And we're going to authorize the use of deadly force. We're going to have maritime operations to interdict precursor chemicals going into Mexico. But I'll tell you this, if someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Unarmed civilians crossing the border?
Probably does. Probably does.
I have mixed feelings on that.
Ambassador Haley, if the United States uses special forces in Mexico without prior notice to the Mexican allies to our south, what would your colleagues at the United Nations think about that?
I don't care what my colleagues at the United Nations think. What I'll tell you is, first of all,
That's a good answer.
you have to go to the source. We have lost more Americans in the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. We lost 75,000 Americans last year. Go to the source. It is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow stops. The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers are, and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will defund sanctuary cities. We will go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that everybody stays in Mexico and they never get here in the first place. And instead of catch and deport, we'll go to catch and release. instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is the way we'll deal with the border. Those are the things that we have to do going forward. But I do agree with Chris. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer
Why do we
that
have
it
a
is.
society where people aren't mentally ill?
Special forces in Mexico shoot them stone cold dead at the
Nick,
border.
you're mentally ill.
One thing I
Shut
just
up,
want to
dude.
say, and how we're talking about this issue is, like Ron, I've actually met many parents across this country who have lost their kids to laced pharmaceuticals that have fentanyl in them. The only thing I would ask, Ron, I think you'd be on the same page with me on this. Let's not even call that an overdose. Right. That's not an overdose. That is poisoning. If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, we would not call that an overdose. You'd call it what it is. It's closer to bioterrorism.
Yeah.
And I say that because as it uniquely relates to this crisis, that does warrant more aggressive means to deal with it. So there's a new presidential election in Mexico in 2024. People may not be aware of that. It's going to be someone other than Obrador, who has been a disaster in Mexico. I think he's even mentioned me obliquely in speeches to say that somebody who would do this shouldn't get anywhere near the White House. Well, AMLO, get out of the way. There's going to be someone else in charge. I hope to build a good relationship with that next president of Mexico. We'll use our own military to seal our own southern border. What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home. Get serious about protecting this border. And then the other thing that hasn't been discussed is the northern border. I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3 million Americans. So we got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck is. Don't just build the wall, build both walls. Can't just complete the wall, use the military to seal the Swiss cheese for the tunnels that they're actually building underneath that wall.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Thank you. Kristen.
Thank you, Hugh.
See, Nick agrees with me.
Let's talk now about last night's election results.
Let's talk about last night.
And Virginia.
How you guys all got your asses
wins in
kicked.
states like Kansas and Kentucky.
Moms
Governor
for
DeSantis,
Liberty lost in
first to
almost
you.
every
How do you
single
see the
state,
path forward
almost
for
every
Republicans on
election.
this issue?
I don't know why Milks for Liberty blocked me.
Life, and I understand that
Moms
it's
for
important
Liberty.
that everyone gets a shot.
Fuck you,
I'm
Moms for
reminded of a
Liberty. I'm
story
with you.
about
Go fuck
a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 40 years ago, 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, baby wouldn't have opportunity, and she came close.
You
to have
should.
an abortion,
That's
but
a
she
good
decided
beer.
to have
Delirium
the baby
tremens.
born poor
Great
in Jamaica.
Belgian.
And the reason I know that story is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022. We're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when we can promote a culture of life. At the same time, I understand that some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as New Hampshire. Iowa's not necessarily going to do it the same as Virginia. So you got to work from the bottom up. You got to do a better job on these referenda. I think of all the stuff that's happened to the pro-life cause, they have been caught flat-footed on these referenda, and they have been losing the referenda. A lot of the people who are voting for the referenda are Republicans who would vote for a Republican candidate. So you got to understand how to do that. But let's just be clear. The Democrats have taken a position. They will not identify the point at which there should be any protection all the way up until birth. That is wrong, and we cannot stand for that.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in. Former President Trump has consistently blamed the abortion issue and how Republican candidates have talked about it for their electoral losses. How do you see the path forward?
I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest. It's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So let's find consensus. Let's agree on how we can ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure that none of these state laws put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion. Let's focus on how to save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can and stop the judgment. We don't need to divide America over this issue anymore.
Thank you, Ambassador.
You're no longer sexy. Give us Astro.
Senator Scott, I'd like you to weigh in. How do you see the path forward, and what do you make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you see this as a consensus issue?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit. I would not allow states like California, Illinois, or New York to have abortion up until the day of birth. I certainly wouldn't not allow for governors, former governor, Democratic governor of Virginia, who talked about infanticide. We need a 15-week federal limit. 3 out of 4 Americans agree with a 15-week limit. 47 out of 50 countries in Europe agree with a 15-week limit. I would challenge both Nikki and Ron to join me at a 15-week limit. It is in our nation's best interest. And frankly, I think it's unethical and immoral to allow for abortions up until the day of birth.
Yeah,
we have an opportunity
genius
in
pretty
this
soon is going to regress backwards.
Stop that reckless behavior from states like California, New York, and Illinois. I'd go a step further. In my parents' plan, we start by talking about funding, block granting resources to crisis pregnancy centers. We should support adoption. There are a number of ways that we can say to the expectant mother that we stand with you. We should not only be pro-life before the child is born.
Go to sleep,
we
little
should be
boy.
pro-life
Past your
after
bedtime.
the child is born just as much.
Senator Scott, thank you. Ambassador Haley, your name was invoked. Would you support a 15-week federal limit?
I would support anything that would pass because that's what would save more babies and support more moms.
He's not
but
a bad guy.
You have to be honest with the American people, and I appreciate that Tim keeps calling me out for this. But Tim, there was a bill last year. Lindsey Graham sponsored it. You didn't even co-sponsor the bill. And then when you first were interviewed on this, when you ran, you wouldn't even say you were for 15 weeks. What I'm saying to the American people is, let's see what we can agree on. Let's bring people together and decide what we can agree on. I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Let me go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Would you support a 15-week federal ban? And what is the path forward on this issue?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I think Nikki Haley did invoke being honest. And I at least want to give credit to Tim Scott. He's honest about where he stood. And I think you should be honest, not making a political calculus, but to say, if a bill is served up, would you sign it? Here's my view on this. Speaking as a man, they say men have trouble speaking on this issue. I don't think we need to be that way. It was my home state of Ohio. I'm upset about this yesterday. That passed a constitutional amendment that now effectively codifies a right to abortion all the way up to the time of birth without parental consent.
Surgery
Why?
for
It's back to that
minors.
Republican culture of losing. The Republicans did not have an alternative amendment or
parental
vision
rights.
on the table.
the Republicans
I know
didn't have
Ohio. I
a
was
fucking
born, raised, and I
alternative.
lived there. It's representative of the country. If in the state of Ohio, we talked about access to contraception, adoption, and also here's the missing ingredient in this movement, sexual responsibility for men. We live in an era of reliable genetic paternity tests that are 100% reliable. So we can say men deserve more responsibility. So we can tell women we're all in this together. It's not men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights. And I come back to that case that Clarence Thomas spoke of. A pregnant woman walking down the street. She's assaulted. The unborn child dies in that assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve liability for that death. You won't find one. that says we share the same instincts on this issue, but we require, I believe, a different generation of leadership
thank you.
to actually lead us forward and unite the country on this
Thank you.
honesty.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Governor Christie,
Well
as
done,
you know,
debate.
federal
He is
limits
on
are
fire
important to a lot of
tonight.
Republicans. Where do you stand on this issue, and what is the path forward for Republicans?
For 50 years, conservative lawyers have been arguing that the federal government should have absolutely nothing to do with this issue constitutionally because it's nowhere in the Constitution. And then Dobbs comes and we finally gain that victory, which was the creation of a constitutional right out of thin air that didn't exist. And now we have people running to say, let's short circuit the states from doing what they need to do, and let's go right to some type of federal ban at a certain number of weeks. And people on the stage have been all over the place, 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 12, 6. Look, the Frowners were really smart. And this is an issue that should be decided in each state. And I trust the people of this country, state by state, to make the call for themselves. Now, it's going to lead to a lot of divergence.
I don't like this issue because they're all just lying.
Unless the life of the mother is at
politics,
risk. In my home state of New Jersey, it goes up to 9 months that you get an abortion. I find that morally reprehensible. But that is what the people of our state have voted for. And we should not short circuit that process until every state's people have the right to weigh in on it. But here's the bigger issue, Kirsten. The bigger issue is
Tim began to touch on. You need to get women voters to win elections, Nick.
To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well too. Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten. It's for the whole life.
It wasn't him, it was his friend.
Governor, thank you. Candidates, thank you. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, we'll hear from all of you with your closing statements.
Oh, dear God.
The abortion thing is like, it just doesn't interest me because they're all lying. You know, and at least Trump came out and said, oh, well, like, you guys are going to vote for me if I talk about it. So that's why I love Trump. Trump is like fighting the pro-lifers. He's like, you pussies don't win elections. I do. You don't win elections. Shut the fuck up. I delivered Dobbs. So shut the fuck up and let me not, talk about it because it'll lose me the election. But these guys, they have to stretch out this long thing about, and basically what they're saying is, well, I'm pro-life, but if I come across as too pro-life, like all the women will vote for the Democrats. I feel like you should just say that. Just come right out. It's like, we're not children. Everyone recognizes that that's what's happening.
Even Donnie called out Tim Scott.
That's a political reality.
Yeah.
The political reality is that women voted 60% in favor of this amendment to the Ohio State Constitution last night.
That will also allow children to trans themselves without parental permit.
Women will kill the GOP.
Yeah, I sent that article out
if it's too pro-life.
to a lot of my relatives up in Ohio, and it was a Trojan horse.
Republicans recognize that they can't push for
it's
any
like,
kind
this
of
is what happens when they don't listen to the left. It's like, it's so clear what it is.
Or even some say at all. That's why Nikki Haley says, well, let's just work on it when I'm president. That's because.
But the good news is Ohio legalized recreational use of marijuana. That was number 2.
That's good. They did get ahead of New Hampshire on that because New Hampshire.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire Republicans fucking suck on weed. They suck. But Massachusetts is like 20 minutes away, so I don't really care that much.
I'm like, you got Mass, you got like Vermont.
I got a whole thing right.
The thing
that's
is,
definitely not drugs. What I just showed you, but like,
you
can go to Massachusetts. This is definitely not drugs. But like, if it were, you could go to Massachusetts and buy this.
Like I was expecting like a mason jar, not no pretty ass, glammed up.
It's called a
adoption centers, and it's
dupe.
like, what if we had a country where nobody wanted to abort babies, so it wasn't an issue? What if we had a country where nobody was on drugs because?
Like, I'm sorry if this is the case.
Nobody on drugs, Nick. Fuck you. We're broken up again.
People wealthy enough that they didn't need Social Security.
Told you.
They had a private retirement plan because they made money.
Hey, Vic, she's ready for you.
Like,
weed isn't a drug, okay? It's not a drug. It's a
where everyone's
plant.
on drugs.
It's an herb.
It's a
doing
plant.
Abortions on a large scale.
God
Something
made
has
plants.
gone wrong.
God made weed because He wants us to be happy,
like
Nick.
Vivek said, it's one thing if somebody I don't
true,
know,
right,
gets
Kino?
poisoned with fentanyl.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
But
for Christ's
addiction
sake,
is a major problem in the country.
I look like
and
a cross between
addiction
Hunter S. Thompson
is
and
a
Chris
symptom
Christie
of a
here.
deeper
Do you
problem.
not think I don't
People
do
get
drugs?
addicted to
Because I
drugs.
I mean,
totally
you're
don't.
wearing a
reason.
Hawaiian
People
shirt
get
and a
addicted to
fedora.
drugs
Like,
because
I mean,
I'm missing the aviators. Hang on.
their lives aren't worth living. So they'd like to alter their state
weed
of
is not a
consciousness.
drug. It is a
So,
plant. It is
Nobody's
a
talking
plant
about how the
business in
society has
nature.
gotten to the point where everybody wants to be addicted, why there's a suicide epidemic.
There wouldn't be a suicide
why there's
epidemic if everyone was addicted to
They're
weed.
talking about access to contraceptives.
You can't
What if we had
OD
a
on
country where
weed.
marriage was
You
a sacred
can't OD
institution?
on
And listen,
weed.
I know it's a presidential debate, so
The
they are
worst thing that
talking about
happens is you eat a bag
policies,
of chips
and policies
or like a pint of ice
are
cream.
reactive
That's
as
it.
opposed to proactive. But it would be good to have some vision from a candidate. Like
I like to
Vivek,
be clear, I don't
Vivek
do
is the
drugs.
closest
Like,
to that, but he's
drugs
really just
don't
offering
lead
up these
to
kind of
more
like
drugs,
clever,
at least to fucking carpentry.
interesting novelty.
For example, on weed, how many
But it's not
things
really
look like a
getting at a
bomb?
unified vision for the country.
I can make an apple out of a bomb. I can make a beer can out of a bomb. I don't want to make
We need
anything.
more
I'm
addiction
lazy.
centers. It's like,
all
we
right,
have all these
turn up
addicts.
the sound, Nick.
Shouldn't
Shut
we
up.
ask why everyone's addicted in the first place, rather than let's have a country
Exactly.
with people in
Cheetos,
rehab?
salt and vinegar chips.
Like, isn't that a problem if you have to
Talkies,
build rehab?
Talkies.
We're gonna build more
Talkies
rehabs.
are pretty
It's like,
great. Nick, turn up the fucking volume.
That's a problem. Like, isn't that a problem by itself?
Statement to focus on any topic you
you.
didn't have time to address and why you and not former President Trump would be the party's best choice to tackle these important issues. You each have a minute. Senator Scott, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
There's a crisis that is growing in our nation, and that crisis is cultural and spiritual. We need a renewal, a great awakening. We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society. We should turn back to faith, patriotism, and individual responsibility. We should stop choosing victimhood and start choosing victory. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in prayer. There are basic truths that built this country. If you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men.
For the
I do
win.
not just want to.
Audience, please.
I do not just.
I haven't had a Funyun in probably 10 years.
I do not just want to win the battle against Joe Biden. I want us together to win the war. The war for our Christian conservative values that changed my life.
Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, you have.
That's why I'm asking you
I'm here
for
to
your
spread
vote.
the gossip. Vote for me.
My mama. My mama.
Thank you for hosting tonight. Listen, it's a gift to be an American. And I'm running for president of the United States because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the division.
Shut up!
I'm tired of seeing the anger. And I can see in the
Nick's
eyes
pain.
of Americans their exhaustion.
Nick is having
Their
feelings
exhaustion
right
from
now.
the petty
This
personal
is the closest
politics
thing we're ever going to
that
see
have
to a
taken
Nick
over
O's
this
face. We're
country
going to get just
over
look
the
at that
last number of
expression in the
years.
boy.
I'm running for president to be a president of consequence, to do the big things, to make sure that America's
He's
role
doing
in the
that on
world
purpose.
stays number one.
The big
That we
things.
stand up for our friends and allies around the world, and we stand up for what we believe in right here at home. And it's not to eliminate our differences. Our differences has always been our strength as a country, not our weakness.
Shut up.
But you can't truly say you love America unless you're ready to open up your heart to every American.
Calm down, Nick.
I'm going to open up
It's
my
gonna be
heart to
over
every
soon.
American as president.
I wanna
And
watch
will
Rachel
make sure that
Maddow
I
after
return
this.
honesty,
I want to see what
integrity
Rachel Maddow
to
has
the
to
Oval
say.
Office.
Do you want to see what
We
Rachel has
deserve
to
and
say,
should
Kino?
accept nothing
rather-
less.
Governor, thank
Yeah,
you very
why
much.
not?
Let's go to
Let's
Mr. Ramaswamy
see
now.
an angry, generic version of Ellen DeGeneres.
I think it's
We've
a good
talked a lot
idea.
about foreign wars
I think
tonight,
it's a
but
great
we're in the
idea.
middle of a war right here at home.
Oh,
It's a war not between black and white or Democrat and Republican. It's between those of us who
Jews
believe
and
in our
Catholics.
founding ideals
Get
and
it?
love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander in chief to lead us to victory in that
Jews and
war.
Nazis.
Who, first of all,
Kidding.
knows that we're in a war. Second of all, can't be captured by the special interests along the way. But third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China. I'll keep us out of World War III and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the
Thanks,
guts to
Naruto.
step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate.
Gavin
Biden should
Newsom.
step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
Right,
Just tell us the truth so we can have an honest
Time is
debate.
up.
That was a good use of a closing statement,
Here we have
Vivek.
1 minute for your closing.
I kind of want to see Biden on the
Thank
debate
you.
stage again. I'm not
The
gonna
world
lie.
is on fire. We have a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march. It is very important that we know how to defend our freedoms and how to defeat
Our
terrorism
freedom.
and
For the
socialism.
idea of
Terrorism,
We have to know the difference
socialism.
between good and evil. We
Nikki,
have
you
to
don't
know
even
the
know what
difference between
socialism
right
is. Shut
and
the
wrong.
fuck up.
We need to know that a
Terrorism.
strong
Crazy
America
eyes.
doesn't
You
start
don't even
wars.
know
A
what it
strong
is.
America
Al-Qaeda,
prevents
Hamas, and
wars.
Hezbollah. Try
And the way
that
we
in a
can
small
focus on
town.
that
I'll try
is
Yeah,
that
to
in
you
make
say
sure
it,
we
Nick.
go back to the soul of America and
I
be
got my
strong
Second
and proud
Amendment.
again. And we can't do that. We can't win
Mr.
the fights
Putin.
of the 21st
I'll
century
say, Mr.
with
Ayatollah, you
politicians from
try
the
that in
20th century.
Texas.
We have to move forward. And we can do this.
Try that
I
in
know
North
we can do
Carolina.
this. So join our movement. Go to NikkiHaley.com and we will once again
No.
show what America that's strong
I want to
and
go to
proud looks like.
5inchheels.com
God
instead,
bless.
Nikki.
Ambassador, thank you.
Don't Google that.
Governor
Still hot,
DeSantis, you're closing. You have 1 minute.
We must reverse our country's decline, and that is going to require leadership.
No
I will
education.
take
Yeah,
the
like
tonight.
the way
hits. I will
Florida
take
right
the
now
arrows.
goes
Zero.
I
further
will
to
take the
political
bars
career.
because it's not about me.
No
It's about
education. 'cause
you.
none of them
It's not
fucking
about
know
the
what's
past.
going
It's
on.
about your future.
God
We are
damn
going
it.
to fight for you. I
No,
am going
yeah,
to
like you're fighting
win
for
for
Florida,
you and your
you
family.
use your own
And I'm
political
going to
office to
lead this
further your
country's
political
revival.
career.
No, you're
As a
not.
veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self as president.
That's gay.
As the father of 3 young kids, I'm going to ensure that this country is left to the next generation in better shape than we found it. And as the
No.
governor of Florida, I delivered on all my promises. And you
Except
can
for
trust
being
me
governor of
to
Florida.
deliver for you
Except for being
as
the governor.
president of the United States. I am asking for your vote. I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the
Yes,
election.
we're sniping
I will
Nick
be a
because he
leader
looks
you
so
can be
handsome with
proud
his
of,
mustache
and
and
as
his
your
flannel.
president,
Well,
I
like
will not
handsome
let
is
you
suggestive.
down.
Just
God
look at
bless
me.
you.
Governor
You know,
DeSantis,
like,
thank you.
shut up,
There's
Nick.
that face.
Oh,
I thought it would be better this time, but it was worse.
No,
That is,
that's it.
that is going to conclude our debate.
What
All
was
right.
that face he
You think
made?
Rachel
Did he
got
do the
hair
smile
extensions?
again? Did he do the smile and I
Just
missed
look
it?
at the face. Focus
Wait.
on the face.
I want to see the smile. Did he do the smile?
Okay, creepy smile.
Hang on. Do it, Rod. Do it.
Veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self
we went
as
back too
president.
far.
Do the smile.
We
No.
will not let you down.
Look at
God
this.
bless you.
Look at
Smile.
this.
Governor DeSantis,
Oh!
Yeah!
We got a smile! Oh, dear God.
All right.
All right. We need to go and watch MSNBC to see instant MSNBC reaction.
Yes,
Instant
angry
MSNBC
lesbian reaction. Let's go.
On John Eastman's advice about creating
Oh, God.
fake slates of electors and telling
Let's
Mike
see.
Pence to delay
Let's see what
hell is that?
MSNBC has to say.
Governor
That was
is
a
already, I
fucking
am
mess.
quite confident, ready to deal with that.
Oh, Joyce, you know, there's so much to unpack. We have to leave it there, my friend. Thank you for closing this out.
All right, let's see.
with
Rachel
some
Maddow
interesting
reaction.
ideas about
Rachel,
what
what do you
Trump
guys
might
think
do
Rachel Maddow
once-
is going to
once
say?
he
Predictions
actually
in the
gets to
chat. What
the
is Rachel
January
Maddow
6th
going to
trial.
say?
That is our show for the evening.
How is she going to feel about the
MSNBC's
debate?
special
They're all going to be
post-Republican
like,
debate
Nikki
analysis
Haley
helmed
was
by my
the
friend and colleague
best.
Rachel Maddow.
Republicans
Nikki
are like
Haley was
women. They were all picking
amazing.
on Nikki.
We like Nikki Haley. So what if he's Islamophobic?
Can you not forget the fact that Chris Christie brought up diabetes? Like, come on, that was the.
Everybody
Yeah,
okay?
for real. That's
Everybody
like
all right?
the
Jack
point
did
of
that.
diabetes.
Okay, yes,
and
we did.
Not just
Good
like
evening and welcome
white
to our
guys.
special
For
coverage
real.
of the third Republican presidential primary debate, which was held tonight in downtown Miami, Florida. The debate just wrapped up seconds ago after 2 hours on stage.
Is
You can
Vivek
see
Kappa
there the
mortging you
debate
there on the
hall,
stage
some of
with
the
So
that?
much
candidates of
better
the
than the
5
last debate.
candidates who
Vivek, the
participated,
obvious
still
winner.
milling
Vivek
there.
He got,
won.
like,
Audience still
he's
milling
gonna
there.
live
Just
the
finishing
fight
up
another day.
within the last
I think
few
Tim
moments.
Scott's
I'm
done
Rachel
after
Maddow
this.
here at MSNBC headquarters with my colleagues Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid and Ari Melber and Stephanie Rule and Lawrence O'Donnell.
All the usual suspects.
Tonight's debate in Miami was a home game for one of the candidates, Ron DeSantis. DeSantis, of course, is the governor of Florida.
And Trump.
Why is Rachel Maddow red? Did she go to the Caribbean or something? Like, what the fuck happened?
I got aviators on my
She's
colors
wearing
and all the
sunglasses.
Polling says by 39 points against his constituent, Florida man and former President Donald Trump.
They gave him Florida man status.
Debates. Former President Donald Trump was a no-show again tonight. He was
You don't need
about
to show
10
up.
miles away.
Everyone is competing for second place.
Event.
I'm going to do a poll about who people think won.
Tonight's
We're not
event,
going to put Tim Scott in because
in
he
downtown
obviously didn't
Miami
win.
was the first
Well,
one not
he
hosted
did
on
it.
Fox News.
Ron,
It was hosted by our NBC News colleagues Lester Holt and
Nikki,
Kristen Welker, along with conservative talk radio host Hugh Hewitt. Right out of the gate, the moderators asked the candidates a question that a lot of them have been either reluctant to answer or had a hard
All
time
right,
coming
let us
up
know
with
who
an
you
answer
think won in
to.
the chat
It's the
over on
very, very
YouTube.
basic,
Sorry, Rumble.
simple question when the polling looks like this.
Carlin, give me
why
2
should
minutes.
you be the nominee
All right.
and not Donald Trump?
And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing.
That Republicans losing theme was a recurring one tonight, which was a little awkward for a Republican candidates debate. But Ron DeSantis there was referring to the fact that tonight's debate happened just 24 hours after a bang-up election night for Democrats. Democrats and liberals effectively won all over the country last night. A Democrat won the governor's race in Ruby Red, Kentucky. Democrats took both houses of the legislature in Virginia. Ohioans voted resoundingly to enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. Abortion is a driving force behind Democratic victories across the country right now. And the candidates on stage tonight in Miami were asked what the path forward should be for the Republican Party on this issue as they keep getting bashed at the polls on this issue over and over again in blue states, in red states, every time and every way the question gets asked. Some of the candidates
I just said he
were quite
won and I
gymnastic
tagged him.
in
That's
avoiding
it. I said
specific answers
Vivek
to
won
that
and he
question.
retweeted it.
South Carolina Senator Tim Scott was not
He
one of them.
follows me.
He just jumped
follows
right
me.
in
He
and
doesn't
said he
follow
wants a
Nick Fuentes.
national
I don't think
abortion
he
ban.
follows me. Haha. The 1 point I have over Nick.
I'd like you to weigh in. How do you see the path forward, and what do you make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you see this as a consensus issue?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit.
He has stopped saying ban. Now he says limit, but that's the only adaptation that we have seen on that issue. Another theme of tonight's debate, back for an encore from the last debate, was just the deep, palpable, withering disgust that candidate Vivek Ramaswamy seems to inspire from his fellow candidates.
You know,
He
Vivek
makes them say
retweeted me.
things you can't imagine they've ever said before in
I
their
just
lives.
tweeted
He
Vivek
makes
won and I
them
tagged
make
him and he
facial
retweeted me.
expressions on the stage that
Oh,
you're quite
shit.
sure
Hang
they
on, I
don't
gotta do that.
in public. He really brings out a side of them
I got a
that
check mark. Come
makes
on.
news, frankly.
Do it.
Here he was with former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in a section of the debate about whether the Chinese-owned app TikTok should be banned. I should just mention this back and forth ended with one of the candidates saying something I have never heard ever.
Rachel
in
Maddow
any
went to the
debate
beach or
I have
something.
ever
Look, she's
covered
got
in
she's
all
got
of my years
she's
on
got
this.
sunglass tan line.
I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
appreciating
out of your
anybody else's
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans.
Get my wife's name out of your motherfucking
Get my
mouth.
wife's
Will
name
Smith.
out of your mouth.
Will Smith, NOG.
Answer.
What she said there was, "You're just scum." You know, I think if they all just said what they really meant, if they got to the chase, this could be a lot more clarifying. Wow, never seen that in any debate at any level, and I've covered some weird debates at weird levels. But for all that, the same question hangs over this debate as all the others. Do the fights between these five folks matter? Is this a real
none of
part
this matters
of the
at all.
Republican Party reckoning with who
This
their
is
nominee is going to be for
theater.
president next year? When,
This
in
is
fact,
for
former
fun.
President Donald Trump is
This
running
is sport.
40 plus, in some cases 50 points ahead of all of them in the polls. Nicole Wallace, I'm going to turn to you first. Because you are, I feel like you are more reserved than usual on this issue. Watching this debate, I feel like you are more contained,
Token
less
male,
voluble
Ari
than I
Melber
usually see.
on the panel.
Do
I
have to
met
answer?
Ari Melber when I went to
You
that
don't have
Trump
to be
rally.
sentence.
I got a
Okay,
picture
so
with him
I'm
and
not going to say
everything.
what I really think, but I'll answer your last question. They don't matter. They don't matter. I mean, this. I said to Ari when I sat down, the most exciting part of these for me is seeing who's there, because I have no idea who's running
All right, now we
second
wait.
to 10th. So, like, for me, it's exciting to see who's running second, third, fourth, fifth. I had no idea who was going to be there, because it doesn't matter to the Republican primary voter, right? Take us out of it. Nikki Haley called the other guy scum. Okay. But the Republican primary voters have weighed in, and they're not into any of these people. They want Trump, and they want Trump by larger numbers than I think anyone has ever been ahead this many weeks before the first primary contest in either party. I don't know that in modern history anyone has ever been 50, 60, 39 points ahead of the next person at the November mark ahead of the first primary, ever.
Then why aren't any of them going for the jugular when it comes to him? The guy was sitting in a courtroom humiliating himself on Monday.
You're giving me reasons to vote for him, lady.
Counts. They just lost 3 times. You're right.
I want my
He's
president
far,
to be a
far ahead.
gangster
So
like
for
Trump
any
or
one of
that.
them, their only shot is to go for him, and none of them did.
Because they think they're probably not going to land that shot, and their future in Republican politics is with this polity, with this group of voters that only likes that guy. And if they're seen as being against that guy, then they're toast.
Then
right?
why did we waste 20 minutes having this substantive conversation about foreign policy, where some of them actually made cogent arguments, and we're all forgetting the fact when it comes to
We
foreign
don't like them
policy,
because they
at
made good
best,
points.
Donald Trump cozies up to Vladimir Putin, writes love letters to Kim Jong-un, and most recently said Hezbollah's really darn smart.
I mean,
she's so salty.
2 comments. One, if you could bottle the contempt.
Oh,
that
Lawrence
Nikki Haley
O'Donnell's
feels
here. Oh, look at
for
Lawrence.
Vivek Ramaswamy, I feel like you could power a small town with the hate.
Dude, her weave is off. Like, seriously,
hates,
like,
yeah. Oh
I,
my
it
God.
is. All centered.
It is.
You can feel it
Joy
on the
Reid's
screen.
hair is always
Thick,
long.
yellow
So
shit.
that's
Always.
one thing I would say. And I think they all don't like him, but she really don't like him.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I sort of felt like Nikki Haley and Chris
I'm
Christie
waiting for
aren't
her
running
damn
for
wig to
president
slide out
now.
the backside of
They're
her
sort
damn
of
head.
almost beseeching the Republican Party at some point after Trump to come back into its body, right? To get their soul back in the body, because their whole conversation
Joy
is so
Reid's
disconnected
wig is
from
like
Trump's existence on this
several
earth.
inches
They are
further
almost
back
normal.
than it should be.
And so it's really jarring to hear
Like
them
Like,
both
she
her
almost-
sound like sort of
forehead goes
normie
up to like
Republicans
here.
in a
Like,
world
her
that's
where
not-
hairline is almost
like-
on par with mine,
so
but
maybe
I don't
they
have
will
cars.
someday.
You're wearing a hat like,
Someday,
or like
I
this
feel
is
like
not
Chris
like
Christie
I'm
her
not saying
hairline goes up
disclose
to
my
here.
hairline. I'm
he's
just
sort of
saying
begging
facts.
the party to come back, you know? I don't think he's succeeding at it. He's going
That
nowhere
shit
in the
is
polls.
all
This is
centered.
going
She
nowhere.
needs to
Maybe
get some
he
extensions
could
or
It's
something.
distracting. She need like this
ticket
is just
together on
ridiculous.
some other
It's better than
universe,
the
but it can't
curls
be in
she
this
used to
one.
have. But
I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, Joy
oh
needs to
wait,
give Rachel
Lawrence,
her
I want to hear
wig.
Lawrence. Oh no, never mind. Lawrence didn't say anything.
You can't say
Bring
I'm
on
not saying
Pam.
what I think. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that's not really what I think. You just have to say what you think.
Let me check my notes.
Yeah, you're talking points.
Lawrence took no notes.
Where's my
Very
notes?
professionally responsible, Lawrence.
Where's my notes?
Very professionally.
really
Oh,
sad.
Oh my God,
Poor
this is so
Joseph.
sad.
Yeah, that's
Cringe,
great.
Lawrence.
Super boy.
This is, by the way, first Republican debate I've watched. Luckily, I've been working at 10 p.m. During the previous Republican debates,
So he's
and I
in the
didn't have to
echo chamber.
participate in any of this. And I now see that Vivek is the MVP of the panel for this reason. He makes everyone else look better than they were ever going
Including
to.
your own
Are
NBC
you
host.
serious?
He's not just the most hated person by everyone on the stage. He's the most hateable character who's ever had
They
a
hate
role
Vivek
in
because he's
presidential
so
debate
good.
in-
This
in
tells you
the
everything you need to
party.
know. Lawrence
And so
O'Donnell
he's
hates
helping
Vivek
them
because
by being
Vivek
up there.
is
He's
so
making Nikki
fucking
Haley
good.
look better, look stronger.
His polls are going to
Everybody
skyrocket. His
else
money's
is
going to increase now.
But I mean, what
It's going to come down to
this is the
DeSantis and
debate
Lawrence
Vivek now.
is seething at how good
in case
Vivek
Trump
is.
chokes on the cheeseburger. That's
Like,
what this debate
he
is.
took
You
off
know,
the gloves
if somehow,
straight after
Trump
one of their
falls out,
own.
it's
on top of everything else as well too.
or Haley.
So,
But isn't it the question? Are they just waiting for him to die, go to jail, or drop out? Because no one's going after him.
So fame is its own currency now in politics, especially in Republican politics, as Trump proved. So Vivek obviously is running for nothing but fame. Christie needs to push up
Vivek
his
is running for
fame
cabinet,
to see if there
Lauren.
might be more money and some sort of ABC contract, after this. And I think Haley and DeSantis are the two who think maybe we have a future, 4 years from now, maybe. And so we want to play credibly.
They really want the warmongers to
and
win.
Tim Scott is going to go back to a quiet life after this. And he's going to be a little more famous. And that might help him with a talk radio gig or something like that.
All right.
Wow.
I think the debate is probably irrelevant for the reasons stated unless something happens. Out of the three we've seen so far, it was the more serious debate. We heard some of the first policy criticisms of Trump, as mentioned, that maybe because it's not so scary to say the debt is high and you can walk it back. They're certainly not dealing with the ethical and legal failings of Donald Trump as alleged in so many forums. But we heard more of that.
Then why
I thought
isn't
the
he
foreign
in
policy was
jail
interesting
if
as
he's
well. And this
failing?
is funny because we think our colleagues are great and they did a great job. But even if I was trying to be as objective as possible, I think it's fair to say that there was kind of more space for a wider range of important issues, American and international, than the last two debates. Full disclosure, though, we're also talking about our own colleagues, but I think that's true.
Yeah.
And so we had this conversation that went across two important, very tense war zones. And I thought we also heard policy from Republicans there who clearly were still trying to figure out how do you sound tough, which is sort of this somewhat allegedly, strong person style foreign policy lingo, while also saying, and DeSantis has his own background in here as a former military JAG lawyer, also saying we're not going to get involved. We're not going to get more involved overseas. And so there was a sort of this tough sounding but anti-interventionist mode. Now, I don't know what that means to anyone or anyone cares, or any of these people aren't going to be in a foreign policy role and they're not going to be president based on what we can tell 2 months out. But I thought that was striking. And then the last point, just the most obvious, is these five voices matter a lot less than the voices of so many voters who rejected everything that their party's offering yesterday. And I'm sure we'll have time to talk about that tonight, but that's what hung over it. Donald Trump had to lie and deny about what happened in 2020. And then a lot of people have burned up a lot of capital joining those lies. Some of them will be held in a coup trial in March. They underperformed in the midterms.
Yes, he wanted political enemies to be arrested.
Slammed yesterday in Ohio and Virginia. And so election denialism not only is false, but it has sort of had them getting high on their own supply. And I thought we saw, even on the abortion discussion, I don't think there's credibility on the waffling, but the waffling says some of those people who've been for abortion bans tonight tried to play it another way. And so I thought that was also interesting that, again, it may not matter. I second Lawrence's blank notepad in that sense, but we learned something about how they want to be perceived.
But on your point, the Republican position on abortion is more unpopular than the Iraq War ever was. Just to throw out something universally agreed to have been very unpopular forever. The 85% of all Americans support abortion in certain or all instances. Not one of those people is speaking to 85% of all Americans. Not one. And the person that inched the closest was Nikki Haley. And she got a roaring,
Vivek is my spirit animal. What the hell is he talking about?
Republican primary debate crowd.
Just
from saying I respect people who are for choice.
I was going to say the same thing. Is that the one person that seems to be at least trying to drag the party towards something sane on abortion is Nikki Haley. She said that essentially, I don't judge how people vote. I'm not happy that people in some states decided to affirm abortion rights, but I don't judge them based on how they're voting. That was at least sounding like she's like, we need some sort of consensus. But you go all the way to the other end of it, where Tim Scott is like, no, ban abortion right now. I'm not going to let California decide their own lives.
That's not what
You
Tim
had
Scott
Christie
said.
make the very
That's
coherent
literally
point
not what Tim Scott
that
said.
all of this time, conservatives have been yelling that it should be the states that decide on abortion, and that's why they wanted to overturn Roe. But now suddenly they're like, no, do a national ban. They were kind of all over the place. But I think, again, Christie and Haley at least sound like they hear what's happening. The rest of them seem completely tone deaf.
Okay, then
Nicole, can I ask you, as a
Fix your hair.
veteran of Republican campaigns when Roe versus Wade was in place, it seems that the abortion issue in those primaries was more stable, and there was a much closer set of agreed upon ways of talking about it. And so was Roe versus Wade in effect protecting Republican nominees and Republican candidates from this kind of exposure that we see now.
Of course, and I mean, look, they were straitjacketed because it was reprehensible to deny exceptions in cases of rape and incest.
Yes.
And life of the mother. It was never considered by the two Republican nominees I worked for. And on the other side was Roe, which was decided by justices appointed by Democratic and Republican presidents. It was never perceived as this wackadoo thing. I worked for a very pro-life president and a very pro-life candidate for president, but it was this policy and language straitjacket where you never, ever, ever contemplated denying the exceptions, which are on the table for Republicans. A lot of the state bans eliminate the exceptions for life of mother.
Kentucky.
Those are 93% opposition. I mean, Republicans have put themselves on the other side of 93% of all Americans, and they wonder why they lost everything yesterday.
In terms of their political skill at talking about it, though, I think you're right, though, that they actually have no idea because those straitjackets were there. They have no idea how to talk about it, and so they're this proverbial dog catching the car. Now they have no idea what to do with it, no idea how to talk about it, and the position that the party has found itself at, and that their state legislators are imposing in state after state after state, is so wildly unpopular that this backlash is going to be knocking them back for a long time. It's going to be a long time before they figure out how to do it.
I was going to say the public sees through these lies. I mean, the whole lie was, oh, these justices who are going onto the court are saying super precedent, we're not going to do anything right away. They said it under oath. When Justice then Judge Kavanaugh wasn't crying, he was repeating under oath, we're not going to change anything right away on this precedent. Settled law, super precedent.
Susan Collins said, yep, that's why
We'll take you at your word. So that's a game in Washington. You don't need a law degree to understand what's going on with the lies in your own body. And I think people see through it, and they see through it in Kansas and Ohio. And so then when to echo Joy's point that came up in the debate, when people say, oh, well, even if we do this, it'll still be at the local level. So you'll have a second say at this. No, that was another lie. And we've seen that. And so Ohio, again, what happened yesterday is Ohio's voters in a state that's gone for Trump twice said, no, thanks. We reject this entire Republican MAGA approach. And we want Roe-level protections enshrined in the state constitution for good, right? And that's a big breakthrough, and that's what they are on the heels about.
Didn't I call this earlier? It's 20% more popular than Biden. So Biden's dealing with 20% on top of wherever he is, if you take that across the state.
And by the way, they're holding this debate in the state where Ron DeSantis, who I think was a non-entity again in this debate.
He wasn't on it. I agree with Joy Reid. Ron DeSantis didn't do anything in
the dead of
debate.
night. I mean, he signed it at midnight.
Nothing.
That's how proud he was of his
perfect example of an atomic time. He is a robot.
He was a robot tonight.
The governor of Iowa, who has endorsed him.
I'm like, you can talk it up to like military attack and demeanor.
So he didn't know how to address it.
But it came off as being artificial.
Yesterday, they're not learning from what the voters are telling them. So you know that they understand that it's bad because they keep telling one new big lie, which is that Democrats want abortion up until birth, which is not a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
Fuck you, Joy. Yes, it is.
Liar, liar, liar.
Liar.
They keep repeating
it's a fucking thing. Up until a week after birth in the steakhouse, where you kill a baby. That's the truth. You are fucking lying, Joy. Fix her hair.
Pregnant. I have had 3 humans. You do not get to 9 months pregnant and then decide, you know what? I've changed my mind. I don't want to be pregnant. That is absurd.
Then why do you mind the law saying you can't do that?
It makes women sound stupid and craven and evil. And the idea that you think that women are having abortions at 9 months.
I went on an at-home bathroom abortion tour, Joy. I saw the abortion worship crying.
Stupid.
And you think your voters are
abortion
stupid.
doula.
There is something interesting here in this
fucking
politics,
abortion
though, because
doula.
we're all talking about the clarity with which the voters
Abortion
are speaking
gift
on this
basket.
issue. And I think that
Abortion
what we're seeing
cake
tonight is
celebrating abortion.
that Republicans haven't figured out how to talk about it.
I'm surprised they didn't have a mask on, tip
trying
of
on
a
the
coat
stage
hanger
tonight
there,
to
to be
speak
honest
about
with
it in the way that was
For
most
real.
relatable and less polarizing and offensive to most of the people listening to her was Nikki Haley. But then what was, after she said her sort of set piece on it, what's the very next thing she did? She attacked Tim Scott for not having supported a national 15-week ban.
Right.
So she's trying to say, oh, no, we're going to do this differently in all these states, and everybody should get a say, and we
I'm
should
pro-life,
stop
I
being so
support 15-week
divisive, and
ban.
don't try to
I'm like, what
impose
the
your will
fuck
on
are you
everybody
then,
else.
Tim?
And you, Tim Scott, you can't be president because you didn't sign on to a national ban.
She also,
I mean,
Nikki
she's
Haley
as close
made
as they get.
a very important point that you never hear in presidential debates in either party.
And calling somebody else
she
dumb.
raised the 60 vote threshold
She did.
point, which was, it's hugely important. She's saying, listen, none of this abortion stuff can happen federally because you're never going to get 60 votes in the United States Senate for any of this crazy stuff that these people are talking about, which also protects her then from not saying that she's going to do one of these crazy federal laws. And you know, the others are all running for king, and they're all saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And Haley's the only one who mentions, oh yeah, there is a Senate and you need 60 votes for pretty much everything you're talking about.
You know what I think she may have figured out?
That is impossible.
watching
They don't
this
got the
come in and
votes.
watching
That
what
ain't
was going on
gonna
last night,
happen.
it's
Not
clear
this election
that
cycle, not the next
pro-life
one.
Trump voting Republicans are voting against the pro-life movement stuff. I mean, you don't get to Bashir's numbers in Kentucky without some of Bashir's voters who saw the ads from a rape survivor voting, who had voted for Trump for president. It's a plus 26 state, voting for a Democrat who supports abortion access. What Republicans have done, what they have said to the electorate is not just we're going to outlaw it, we're going to make it a crime.
Yeah.
True.
And even Republican
Morons.
voters are voting against the abortion law. I mean, Ohio went down again 20 points ahead of the Biden number, voted to enshrine abortion rights in the Constitution. I mean, I
State
not only was
Constitution,
I
get
not
it
sure
right.
that would pass, I never thought it would pass with 20% more support than supports Biden. I mean, what the voters have heard, and their problem is they have now branded themselves as criminalizing healthcare.
Yeah, and criminalizing women and having women arrested. And by the way, I would argue
right.
that Mississippi, which
They're
you know,
just
has been
going
written
on and
off
on
by
about
Democrats
abortion, and
for
I'm ready to be done with the stream. So Kino, final thoughts.
Final thoughts?
Yes, final thoughts on the debate.
I was really concerned about Vivek. You know, like the last debate that he did was lukewarm, extremely anemic and underwhelming. And I'm like, all right, bro, this is your shot. This is your moment. And he did not disappoint. He wasn't on stage competing against anyone else. He was on stage competing against everyone, including the moderators. And he called them out from the very get-go.
Yep.
Which was refreshing.
I agree. I think it was Vivek's night. I think Ron DeSantis was a non-entity. Chris Christie wasn't even that fiery. So it's like Chris Christie, like the only reason I even want Chris Christie there is he's going to cause trouble. He didn't cause any trouble. Nikki Haley was seething the entire night. She was the classic epitome of a bitchy, warmongering neocon. Tim Scott, you know, I like Tim Scott. I really do. But he's not exciting. It was Vivek's night as far as I'm concerned.
Like, bottom line, if I had to pick, you know, like a definitive winner in this debate tonight, it was Vivek. He went after everyone and everything possible, as a good candidate should. You know, he wasn't relying on the conventional talking points. He's like, no, screw you guys. You guys are idiots, and here's why. This is why this guy is winning, and here's why. And this is why the media is corrupt, and here's why. He brought everything to the table. Everyone else was plastic, bought, and paid for. So it's gonna be interesting.
I agree.
Now,
go ahead.
After this debate, like my prediction, honestly, is gonna be obviously it's gonna be Trump, DeSantis, and Vivek. They're gonna be the final three contenders. Everyone on that station night was again competing for second place. Regarding DeSantis and his hate speech laws here in the state of Florida, he made it illegal to speak out against certain demographics here in speech. He's violated so many constitutional rights in the state of Florida. I wish Vivek would have capitalized on. I'm gonna give the guy a pass. He won tonight. I would have loved for Vivek to say taxation is theft, and here's why. That would have been great. He would have captured so many young voters with that.
That's true. If he had dropped the taxation is theft bomb, like It would have been amazing.
Especially with the topic of the Social Security, Medicare. Is I get it. I understand why seniors, needed. They're entitled to those benefits. I completely understand it though. But for funding foreign wars that we have no business being in, especially to NATO allies, I'm like, if he would have just dropped that truth bomb, I'm like, it would have been over.
It would have been amazing. Well, I think it was a good night, significantly better than the last debate. I feel much better about watching future debates because the last debate really made me angry. But this was good, and I thought that even Nick's commentary, he didn't actually do that much, but I thought it was helpful to have like his input as well to get the far left or the far. Wow, that was a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
The far right impact as well. So that was good. I think it was overall a good night. Thank you, Kino, for joining me. Thank you guys for coming out on YouTube and Rumble.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me as always.
Yeah, anytime. Please mount the like button on the way out the door, guys. And we'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.